that all tie into the layers of the central message of this game, which, as Kratos often says, be better. Right from the beginning, we show Kratos in mourning, and this is not the first time, as the first time when we first see him, it led to him destroying Olympus in a revenge-filled hatred. Here, he's trying to be a new person in a new land, with a new family, but loss is still loss, and he still has humanity enough to grieve. They never really say how Faye died, so I can only assume natural causes, as nobody blames anybody, so according to this game, that means Faye went straight to hell, as she did not ascend to Valhalla. I don't know, maybe, I'm sure it's different for giants, probably. Anyway, Kratos is not only a god with a shot at trying to live as a mortal man, but he has a son now and now has a second chance to be a father. Interestingly, he seems uncomfortable with the idea, when you think he would cherish that second chance, but he kind of treats his kid more like a soldier, and then hides his demigod nature. He does want to be a better father, but he's still trying to just figure it out. That's the journey we see with him. Now, at the same time, Atreus mostly grew up in the care of his mother, so he's also trying to figure out his own father. Atreus is a smart and inquisitive kid who's just now thrust into deadly situations and sees the raw strength of his dad and just feels inadequate by comparison, which is true. But then he's also very hasty and quick to anger. You know, and part of that is a kid who just lost his mother and is trying to please his father, but really it's also a byproduct of the miscommunication they have. Kratos talks at his kid, not always to him, and Atreus talks to Kratos, and Kratos doesn't listen most of the time. So all these contained emotions just explode out of the kid from time to time. Honestly, these are such well fleshed out characters with very relatable family friction and character flaws and personality quirks, and it's coming from God of War of all things. Who would have seen that coming? And this is the part that I like, as in the original you present Kratos as a very impassioned mortal, and it's all the more tragic when he sees a rise to glory and then fall and then betrayal and then revenge. It's a roller coaster of empathetic situations that are great for dramas and common in Greek storytelling, which is part of the presentation I'm glad they brought back here, but in a more modern sense. What I also like is this father and son relationship building. It's not really rushed like bad television writing. It's gradual, full of mistakes, and two sides bouncing off of each other with actions and words. Mistakes are made, and sometimes they laugh with each other and then they get mad at each other. It's just a great pacing for the medium of a video game, and overlaying it on with a journey is a very natural setting for it. It works perfectly as it represents the flow of a long period of time. It's not like the journey actually took 15 hours in real time like the game. Though, if I could criticize the notion of using Kratos as his grounded character, he's just way too strong. Even in his retired state, to be so slow and plodding and struggling with this trip. Like, he chose to slow down to the pace of Atreus for this trip, probably just to let the kid grow into it. But really, if he wanted to get this done, he could have just leapt and sprinted up the mountain and been back in the day, if he just did it on his own. Now, like, none of this downplayed gameplay garbage of being able to leap 100 feet in a cutscene, but you can't jump 1 foot in the air in the actual game. So, narratively, this Kratos works, but gameplay, it's a massive nerf. I know it's a minor nitpick, but it's the same way that they struggle to write stories for Superman, where it's like they try to nerf him in a fight, when that's really the place where he would really exceed in, and sometimes the best Superman stories are the one where it's just an emotional tale being told with him with other humans, like especially his own son. Like, those are the best stories. Anyway, I'll talk more about this later. Back to the characters. So, as Kratos is a god trying to be a man, Atreus is a man learning he is a god. Like, that journey is a great mirror to Kratos, as they can observe each other, they complement each other, as Kratos sees a lot of his arrogance and impetuous nature in his son and tries to warn him with experience. Meanwhile, the kid loves the idea of being a god, even though he doesn't understand it, which is the naivety of a child. They're just cruel in their innocence, and that's always a fascinating character device for trouble, as it's often used here. You combine that with a kid who's trying to be seen by his dad, who's also a god, and someone also on the path of self-improvement of a sick kid who sucks, to a whiny kid in battle, to like this arrogant brat, to this trusted combat partner. It's a satisfying journey to watch, and we the audience get to feel proud of seeing him grow up and be a part of that like Kratos did. It's good immersion. Show, don't tell how and why Kratos recognizes his son for his own merits. And Atreus isn't wrong about being mad at his father for ignoring and emotionally abandoning him either. And both we and Kratos eventually accept that, even if, we wanted to be deaf to it. Now we have Freya, a goddess who's being used as a parallel to Kratos. She is also a goddess lying low, has a sour history of loss and betrayal by gods and resents them. She's also an accomplished warrior who now cares more about her son, who also resents her for her actions that unintentionally harmed them. She helps them as a way to make up for her own mistakes and sees herself in Kratos and Atreus, but more importantly, She sees them work it out and grow closer from that, and wanting that, decides to change and try to make amends to her son. She loves him too much, to both of their detriments, and is willing to side with him against anyone, even Kratos and Atreus, the people who put her on this path of self-work. Seeing as the player, Freya, our ally, be like us but on a different path, now come at odds against us, even though we both want the same thing, but the thing we have in common is also the thing that's driving us apart and is literally killing them. So to save her means to break her by destroying what she loves more than her own life, and doing the right thing means being the villain, at least from one perspective. It also adds that everyone is the hero of their own story, and Atreus even comments on that, when it's never so simple as right versus wrong, just actions and consequences, and the choices we can live with. You see, there's deep messaging with great theming, and it's just well executed on more than one layer. Finally, we have Baldur, who is accepted by his father, who, he's just taking advantage of him, but either way, Baldur is satisfied with what he has. He hates his mother and the curse she gave him, yet it's that curse that enables him to be so useful to Odin. He actually gets over obsessing the past about her and wants to just move on, when she fights him to just be a part of his life, and then he just straight up rejects her so hard, he just wants to kill her and move on. Freya is willing to die for him, and Baldur is glad to kill his mother, and both sides are happy with this cycle. This is completely opposite to Atreus, who is not strong, loves his mother and resents his father, and whose body and mind is just too weak to indulge in his godhood. At one point, Atreus treads towards the path that would put him ending up like Baldur, but Kratos stops him out of love for his son, in a manner different from Freya, who was, acting as a good part of fear alongside her overprotection and love. Then it's such good irony that the simple act of Kratos being an observant but strict father to mend Atreus' quiver and earning the love and respect of Atreus is what undid Baldur, who knocked aside the kid trying to protect his father while trying to kill him so he can kill his mother. The way these four characters have such clear and direct relationships with each other in a manner that mirrors their own internal conflicts and stories alongside the main plot, and they're interconnected with each other, is so well done. Really, top marks on the writing of these four. On this aspect alone, the writing is just A tier. Now, for the rest of the plot and supporting cast, it's whatever. The adventure hook is the mother's last wish was to spread her ashes, which was a trick per her vision to see this prophecy in Jotunheim. Sure, and then we meet some squabbling dwarf brothers who also put us on side quests on other famous dwarves who dug too deep and too greedily to unfortunate ends. Again, it's whatever. The repeated message of this game was be better, and each of the four main characters was trying to do better by themselves. Kratos is trying to be a better father and mentor, and be better than his past in general, but can't escape his past, and so embraces it to the benefit of his son and shows by example to be better than him and his father. Freya tries to make up for her past by trying to be better and help the father and son, and tries to mend her own past, though fails. Atreus tries to be better for his father on the outset and fails, and learns it's just better to be himself, and through strength of character develops into a better version of himself. Baldur hates the circumstances he never asked for and chose to be better by being of use to his father and getting past his obsessive hatred of his mother, but when given the chance to indulge in his wishes, he accepts and dies for it. All of them trying to be better and succeeding in some ways and failing in others, often by themselves and through others. These dynamics clashing make for such good and interesting storytelling alongside what's already going on. It's one of those that makes the journey better than the destination, and honestly, when it comes to the characterization in this game, I can only say it's simply excellent. So let's move on and talk about the cinematics of this game. So like a few games before, this game chose to be a one-shot game for the majority of it, where everything's kind of done in one sort of camera shot, no cuts, even though technically they do a cut at the very end. But what this means is perspective never changed to what the current actor could not directly see. So a lot of lore and off-screen exposition would be filled in by Mimir during the game's many off-loading screens disguised as rowing, climbing, shimmying, crawling, and just general slow walking and movement. All the same, the game often goes for a sense of scale in many shots, pulling back to emphasize the size of something in the background while minimizing the screen space on the foreground person, or the opposite effect to make Kratos seem big and imposing. This was very much shot like a movie, film grain and all as a filter, but because God of War is known for its cinematics, that is per expectation. Things look good, and I love that it just kind of peels back for wider angles for faster action, as you can actually see what's going on. Lighting, as I said before, is a big deal with this, with a lot of shots during the day, using warm lighting for indoor moments, and only like a few dark scenes when things just need to be like tense. So yeah, it's just a well shot game overall. All the cutscenes use the in-game engine, and everything was motion captured, so it looks very natural. The only animations that are just kind of lame are all the combat ones, funnily enough. Enemies are just stiffer, simpler, and the executions are all pretty tame. There is very little variety for executions for some reason, so they get old fast. And while there is a lot of blood splatter, there really isn't as much gore as I would have expected for many of these, allegedly God of War glory kills. And speaking of gameplay, this is very average as far as over-the-shoulder games go. We already have seen middle to short range in melee combat be done in over-the-shoulder games. It's not new. Like Resident Evil 4, Gears of War, and of course King of this Mountain in general, God Hand. God of War has got nothing on God Hand when it comes to its combat systems and execution of the over-the-shoulder gameplay, in melee especially. However, it also does nothing to improve the problems and common criticisms of this kind of combat. When the camera is so close to the character, you lose a ton of spatial awareness, which is a bad thing for action games. You become a lot more tunnel vision in open areas, and there's no camera control as it's fixed to your shoulder. Fortunately, the combat is pretty simple in this game, so it avoids complexities for the most part by being overly simple itself. And that's fine, but that's also safe, and it gets no points. Many people will find themselves kind of wishing for the older style of combat, even with the fixed camera angles that they had. Otherwise, this game places a big deal on loot and gear score. I like looter games, but this game is not quite there, and I do not like my skill in combat to be greatly overshadowed by gear score. Being down a single level from your enemy is a huge gap in damage dealt and received, making you chase bigger numbers for stats than improving on combat, which to me is a bit of a miss. Otherwise, I do like the overall level design, environmental gimmicks and theming notwithstanding. The environments make an attempt to feel lived in versus being just video game levels, but the inclusion of forced puzzles also takes away from that. In the history of video games, action games usually suffer from a few mechanics that are just generally very unpopular because they just feel like tacked on extras, like escort missions, vehicle sections, and forced puzzles. And it's especially in the cases where they're just gimmicky things for the sake of variety and padding. The puzzles are here for the most part very simple obstacles and not trying to be like Zelda where they're the central objective. Though I do think Tears Vault is one section that is kind of like a Zelda dungeon, and as far as dungeons go, it was good and sort of makes me wish that there could have been, cool to have like another one, even as side content. The Dwarven Mine was sort of dungeony, but not really. Otherwise, the game has momentum where you are moving forward and only detours and fights slow you down. The puzzles, therefore, do not slow you down enough to feel like padding, nor are they so frequent. One thing that people commonly criticize is the overuse of enemy. There's not a lot of enemy variety here, which is true. And it's both good and bad for different reasons. Where it is bad is the obvious, where the bosses and the mini-bosses, like the main set piece bosses are all different. Even though you fight Baldur, they have multiple stages where it gets grander and more epic in terms of each stage of that fight, so that's okay. Same thing for the dragon. They have multiple phases where everything escalates, becomes more crazy and over the top. That's fine. But the mini bosses, yes, you fight a dozen of the same troll. Oh, they're colored differently, and maybe this one has a different. It's the same enemy. It's the same enemy. And you fight the same couple of Draugrs over and over, and occasionally an ogre. So with the case of the common enemies, it's okay that your fodder enemies all look and feel the same, and I'll tell you why. God of War also needs to remember that it should be a power fantasy. You are the God of War, and you have been through half a dozen games where you are the strongest thing out there, and everything just wishes it wasn't in the room with you. The things that are on your level of beating you down are few and far between. Grunts are not it. Grunts are just fodder to be squished down, and it indulges in that power fantasy. In the beginning, when you're shaking off the rust and you're kind of really bad with things, you're using a weapon that is not the Chaos Blade, so you don't feel super comfortable with it. Yeah, it's you're adjusting to a new style, you're learning into it, so that makes sense, and you don't have all your strength and magic that was tied to the land of the last game, so you don't have that. As the game goes on, from Draugrs that used to take 6 to 7 hits to kill, now die in 1 or 2 hits. You gradually get to the point where you feel more powerful, you feel that strength progression. That's where the repetitious enemies become good, but when they become more just background. Even when you throw a whole bunch of elves and Draugr in your way, and you're just throwing your axe and they all just fall They all just fall down. That's where it feels good. And that's okay that, they reuse the enemy. And there are also side quests in this game, but other than the Valkyrie optional super bosses, they're all just extraneous to the main story. They're mostly there just to have the dwarves do something other than just upgrade gear and add some world building and incorporations to the Norse mythology setting. The balance of this game is good enough to where you are not seriously undergeared for the difficulty curve of this game by ignoring the side quests, and I do appreciate that. They are also, so separate that you don't feel like you're missing any critical information about the story or its characters by not doing them. Again, appreciated, as otherwise that does hurt the main story for the sake of padding, which would be awful. Which leads right up into talking about pacing. And this game, apart from Alfheim Detour, just feels on track and well done in its pacing. God of War benefits from being a linear adventure, and does not give into the freedom of trying to be more open world. Even the Lake of the Nine is well used to be a hub, so that you see it and visit it and revisit it and cross over it multiple times for different reasons, and so it's used as a destination, versus just making it longer to get from point A to point B. I cannot tell you the sheer amount of games that just have a big open space, or a quote-unquote open world, for the sake of just being big and putting a bunch of useless collectibles across it to make it feel like content other than filler. Yes, filler is content, but that's why it's called filler content. It's just there to stretch out game time artificially. And then once you collect the things, the world is an empty void and useless with no purpose. This lake is it's purposeful first and does have useless collectible stuff, but it's to the side. It's not made just to hold useless collectibles first. There's a very subtle but very important difference there. So good pacing there too. Now let's move on to the soundtrack, and here's where I have to be more critical than not. No offense, Bear McCreary, but you're just trying to score a movie, and while that makes for good ambient mood-setting music, it's really not memorable or worth listening to on its own. He also reuses Kratos' theme for multiple renditions, all of which should be okay, but it just doesn't wow on its own. Like, people, when they nominate this for Best Soundtrack of the Year, that is madcap. No. The difference is that this is scoring for scenes. He's not, again, making melodies to be listened to out of context. I am pretty biased towards the former, as the point of music is to generate emotion. And I feel you can do that, and I've seen where you can do that, and make a piece that is good for a scene, but the truly great pieces do it without needing the scene as a crutch. And what I mean is, you can listen to it and even see a specific scene or character. You do that with Kratos' theme, but that theme has been around, and it's been overused in this game to where no one scene can evoke that musical piece. I think as a better example, think like Star Wars with how it uses themes and themes with scenes like Duel of Fates or the Imperial March. When you hear them, you think of those scenes, like some of them very specifically. But you can also listen to them without having to watch the movie and feel like it's appropriate, like, oh, this is a good music even if I'm not watching the movie at the same time. That's what I mean. Now, where does that put this game on my trifecta of fun, fascinating, and fulfilling? Was this game fun? I think it was fun in the moment, but it is sort of a mindless sort of fun. Combat was nothing to write home about, and nobody really looks to God of War in the modern sense as a game to copy its gameplay and presentation like they did in the classic trilogy, so it's more of a follower now than a trendsetter. It still felt like a God of War game, like it hit a lot of the same itches and things that you would expect in a God of War game checklist, quick time events and all, so it does get a pass. Was this game fascinating? Very much so. This game is still talked about today as Dad of Boy. Tongue-in-cheek was still appreciated, and that sort of character evolution was quite impactful then, and still talked about now. Not just for how much of a pivot it was, but which really still divides fans to this day, but that for all the father figures in gaming that we do and don't have, Kratos is not only one of them, but a well-done one. Who would have thought Kratos as a dad as a role model? Amazing, but they pulled it off. That and how I talked about the great characterization of the main cast, and this is just a good game to examine for that. Now, was this game fulfilling? I would say yes, if for the balance of the exploration, combat, and storytelling that I said I wanted. I don't know if this game is 23 million copies good, but it is what it is, and despite its mild take on action and its, main character, it is a solid game. So for all of that, I am confident in ranking God of War, aka Dad of Boy 2018, a B+. It really is a cut above the rest in writing and presentation, even if an average cut in action and level design for an action-adventure game. It's not genre or even subgenre defining anymore for the game defining thing, but We cannot overlook that it is a great example of refinement paying off in a gamble to pivot its own long-standing series, which not many games can claim they can do. A lot of games pivot to keep their series alive or graduate them into a more modern audience, and fail colossally, alienating both the original and the new one. And God of War managed to gather both. Even people who don't like the direction it went to have to appreciate the way that it's succeeded. So, you can follow me on Twitter at OnlyBlackMay, streaming on YouTube and my Discord server. Thanks for being a patron or member, and I'll see you on the next battlefield. Hello, fellow. So that was my thoughts initially on God of War 2018. I give it a lot of praise because even though it did a lot of very divisive pivoting, like I said, in the series, it still pulled off a lot of things successfully, mostly in the story department, but it did what I really wanted God of War to be, which was, in my opinion, like the first one, a good mix of dramatic storytelling with action, with some rewarding value of exploration. There really was less exploration, but we demanded less of it back in the day. But the balance of very innovative like gameplay and storytelling was very iconic of the original God of War. In 2018, you don't have necessarily innovative combat at all. In fact, it's very generic. It's very average. It's not even impressive for over-the-shoulder third-person action games. But the balance that they had was good. There wasn't too little, and there wasn't too much. And there should not have been too much, because it was just okay. It was very simplified third-person fighting. I don't think they should have leaned too hard into that, because that would not have been enough to carry the game. And they didn't undermine it by having too little of it, which that would have made it lose focus as a God of War game, which if you're going to be an action-adventure game, where's the action part of that adventure? So, those are my thoughts. I consider 2018 a very good point for the series. It brought in new life, because the archaic way that the original games would have gone don't necessarily have a big role here. They modernized many of the stronger points, and so it kind of separates the two of being like the old era and the new era. Now that being said, there are a couple of points that I reminded myself there, that when we're talking about Ragnarok, and we're going to directly compare, as I just showed, I finished and completed and got the platinum for God of War Ragnarok. You know, I'm the top 8.9% of all gamers. What an amazing gamer I am. Here's the problem. The level design that I talked about in here, with them using their open space, being purposefully driven and not just being a side area that's just big for the sake of being big and just chock full of useless, meaningless collection and side quests that have nothing to do with the main quests that are completely extraneous. That's exactly what fucking Ragnarok did. And it pisses me off. Because you only see a very small portion of the 9 realms when you're actually playing the main story. It's mostly a graduated hallway. It's a very glorified hallway. And then we do the side content, 3 of the realms, not all of them. Half of the realms are actually just hallways, even post-game. Like, Jotunheim is just the Angrboda main, like, her house section, that's it. Helheim is just a hallway. Niflheim is just a hallway. And, what is it? Muspelheim is just a hallway that opens up to the combat arena, that they kind of change the challenges. Instead of being a ladder match, you just have 9 potential challenges, and you have to do the same challenges in 6 different orders, and that's it. That's how you beat the area. That's it. It's they heavily recycle that content. It's less inspired. On one hand, I am glad that it doesn't drag on for too long, because the combat in Ragnarok is incidentally a step down from even 2018. And so it is unfortunate that half the realms, they don't even do that. Now, the other realms that they really expanded on, quote unquote, is going to be Alfheim, where it expands into a big desert / wasteland. Midgard, of course, where it's a frozen over area. Svartalfheim, which is more like a lake and you're rowing around on it. And Vanaheim, which is more of a jungle area, where you have part rowing but part just running around in this big tree area in Serene Ruins. And there's also a wasteland that you turn into a river. They are just big areas that serve no purpose but to have pointless collection. That is absolute padding. Just incredible padding in Ragnarok. They do not weave those big areas in any way of relevance to the main game, and that is such a waste. It is such a waste that they said, oh, explore the 9 realms. Well, you can only explore 4 of the 9 realms. And what I mean by explore, I mean they literally take a Lake of the Nine approach, and they well, I guess it makes sense because remember the all the realms are the same area, just layered on top of each other dimensionally. So it kind of makes sense that a few of them have a Lake of the Nine-esque thing. But here's how you complete those areas. You pick any starting point, and you go in a circle, and you complete all the things, and you're done with it. That's it. It is so uninspired. It is... I felt for a long while I was playing this 90s character collectathon all over again. It was antiquated in its design. It lost all purpose and relevance. It was just there to pad game time. God of War Ragnarok is absolutely a longer game than 2018. It has more content, and I'm using air quotes on content. However, it is still a 70-30 split on cinematics and load screens and wandering versus actual action adventure. And the world usage that they have is very poor to facilitating and supporting the story that they're trying to say. On one hand, the design that they chose allows you to do it at any point in time, meaning that you can approach many of them and do a lot of things the moment you first encounter it, but there's a lot of stuff you can do post-game. On the other, and to give credit where credit's due, they do write that into account because the times we're traveling with Atreus versus the times you're traveling with Freya, they will comment and use proper past tense or present tense based on who you're with and what just happened. So they do reframe a lot of context for those lines. On the other hand, even though they present a lot of it, they present very boring stuff for you to do. I've seen it in RPGs all the time, where like the trifecta of side quests in RPGs, which is go over here and kill a thing, collect X many of Y object, or go over here and talk to a person. That is all you do here. It's just that. And the side areas aren't even fundamentally more interesting. You don't even get like a cool dungeon area like in 2018 where you're exploring this old dwarf fortress, or you're in Tyr's Temple that's kind of like a very weak Zelda-like dungeon. You don't get a single dungeon in this entire game. It is wide open wasted space, which I can't even give them credit on too, because Lake of the Nine, what is a lake? It's a big wide open space that you just sail through. That's just water and nothing else. What is a desert? It's a big wide open area of sand and nothing else. What is a snow tundra in this game? It's a big wide open area with nothing there but ice. And then what's the lake? It is just a big wide open area with nothing there. So you just take longer to get from point A to point B, and even point A to point B is just mindless collection. So it was not very fun. Any of that, I did not at any point during any of the collection stuff think what I was doing was fun. I did, however, notice that they really wrote Kratos as not only a bleeding heart, which to me is just like, what the hell? Because in the last game, he's all like, be better, close your heart to their suffering. A warrior does not feel mercy for their enemies. To in this game, be better, but open your heart to their suffering. It's like, what? Why did you do a direct 180 turn here? And it's not like, oh, he learned from the last game. No, the last game was him learning from the previous 8 games. And he was passing that for his son to be better. That's not who Kratos would have been or would have said. It's like, did you even play 2018? So the people who designed these environments in Ragnarok took an absolute step down and decided to just waste the player's time with this quote-unquote worlds. And that really bothers me. And there were times where actually one point I will give credit to. In 2018, I said, wouldn't it have been nice if there was one set piece where you could say, oh, I really remember this realm for this thing. They do that a couple of times in Ragnarok, but they do it for the same theme. Kratos is apparently a friend to the plants and trees. Because in each realm, he's saving an animal. in Svartalfheim, he saves a giant whale, which would look kind of cool. If you incorporated that in the main story somehow, there are many ways you could have done it. In Midgard, he saves the wolves. In Alfheim, he saves a giant jellyfish that fly in the sky, and that's just kind of it. They don't really do anything else. In Niflheim, you save the crows. No. You technically save Garm, who's Fenrir then. So you do that in Niflheim, but that's part of the main story. In no, it is Niflheim. In Niflheim, you save the crows, is what you do. Which turns out the crows were forged by this witch from the souls of children. You're supposed to feel bad about that. Whatever. So you save the crows. And in Helheim, you don't really do anything. Oh, and in Vanaheim, you also save the elk and the deer. You save them. So you do that. So yeah, in all of them, you do have this thing where it's like, we need to protect the ecosystem and save these animals. It's like, what? Why do we care about this? This has nothing to do with anything. It's so pointless. It's just there to hold collectibles. So I don't even necessarily want that to be part of the main quest because it would have been so distracting. But if you want to have like, here's the legendary creature, blah, blah, blah. And you showcase and you're like, ooh, it's big. And there's collectibles on it. Cool. You could have done that during the main game if you could incorporate that in an interesting way. So doing the 20 hours of side quests in no way improved my opinion of God of War Ragnarok. It would have only inflated the already bloated main quest that is story-wise much shorter than 2018, much less focused, much weaker character writing than 2018. You saw like the character writing section, how smart and nuanced it was, how it weaved itself into the character drama and the actual main plot in such a smart way, with good payoffs, good setup and good payoffs, and that did not happen in Ragnarok. Absolute step down. And yeah, hold on, I've been talking for too long. let me look at chat real fast. Sorry, chat. I'm literally just like going off on my own again. This is the just chatting part. Chatting means we talk to each other. Let's see. Island Life Stevens. I honestly just watched the cutscene movie on YouTube and enjoyed the story, but it doesn't bother me. I didn't play it. Here's the thing, Island Stevens. Normally I say if you just watch the cutscenes, you can't say you even played it. But in games that are as cinematic heavy as God of War, I can tell you right now, just watching the cutscenes, you practically played the game. Because here's how you played the game in case for the sections that were gameplay. You either push forward on the analog stick, and that's all you do, or you do what you do in combat scenarios that I did through the entirety of the game, and that is spam runic attacks and light attacks. You don't need to do anything. You do not need to master this combat system. It is very simple. And you also need a dodge roll like it's Dark Souls for some reason. Because even the most common grunt enemy will kill you, because this game does not want you to live a power fantasy for some reason. Retro Chad, this game seems like The Last of Us disguised as God of War. They take old IPs and use them as a mouthpiece for subliminal programming. I will definitely say that the... Oh, you know what I just realized? I didn't talk about Mimir at all in 2018, other than using him as his exposition, which I guess is fair. He really is just used for exposition in 2018. He's not really developed as a character. They try to add in the side quests for Ragnarok more development for Freya and the people she cares about, and Mimir, the people he cares about, but they're not necessarily people Kratos would care about. He's just like, I'm here to help a friend, and that's mostly it, which is great for Kratos, but is not fundamentally interesting to me, the player, who actually has to do this stuff. I also want to point out The Last of Us is just a rehash of The Walking Dead and The Road. If you've ever seen the movie The Road, watch it, and you will swear Naughty Dog copied that movie into a video game. There's way too many parallels. So Last of Us was just copying something else. I don't know if... I could see some parallels of like the idea of letting go, which was a big theme of Ragnarok being related to Last of Us, but I don't know. I really don't think the overall narrative themes are that close together, but we'll see. Bradley, I decided to watch 2018 cutscenes and then Ragnarok cutscenes. The difference in writing quality is disgusting. Ragnarok really dropped the ball. I agree. James, the hand-holding really killed it for me. Oh, I completely forgot to talk about the hand-holding. You are right, James. Severe hand-holding in this game. I spent 10 hours in it, and not letting me do the puzzles myself or turn down the hints pissed me off the most. Tell me about it. So many times I'm like, I'm in the middle of solving this thing, they're like, I think you need to do this. I'm like, I know this, and I'm only audibly irritated because I didn't vocalize how I'm solving this thing, so you vocalizing it while I'm doing it makes it sound like I'm only doing what you're telling me to do, and it undermines my own creative effort. I never felt rewarded for solving things because the game didn't want me to solve things on my own. I played 2018 on PC, I only bought a PS5. Yeah. I hear you, James. I hear you. For this new game, and I hate it. Oh, sorry. I only bought a PS5 for this new game, and I hate it so much. Lol. Hey, man. I'm with you. I'm with you, my guy. I'm with you. I prefer the jellyfish one for the moment with Atreus. So here's the thing, Idris. I didn't do it with Atreus. I did it with Freya after the game. And I agree, this was absolutely meant for Kratos to spend time with his son before he has empty nest syndrome. And when you play it with Freya, there is no emotional balance. All there is like, man, Atreus really would have liked to see this. Wow. Atreus would have been proud that you were doing this just for his sake. Hey, how come you're freeing jellyfish, Kratos? Because my son would have wanted it. You sound so desperately lonely, Kratos. And I really don't feel it's appropriate, per se. And yeah, it's like that scene, that part, that would have been interesting to include later. Maybe when they were, when Atreus was weeping heavily about Brock for some stupid reason. That would have been a much more time for Kratos to connect with his son. Because I get that the evolution of parenthood is raising a child and then having to let go of that child as they become their own adult. That would have been an interesting theme. That theme was not explored in an interesting way in this game. Compared to the more mature, relatable drama that was written in the last one, the drama in this game was so contrived. Instead of being like smart storytelling, it felt like daytime television writing, like a soap opera. It was so shallow and contrived. It's like, this is bad writing. It's just straight up bad writing. The one with Vigo, right? Good movie? Yeah, James, exactly. Yeah, that road. The Road. Watch it. Hey, Wesley, how's it going? I played both on Give Me God of War as well, and 90% of Ragnarok is just straight unfair one-hit kill compared to 20T's timing, attack, and defense. Dude, you know how many, like this, there's so many enemies in Ragnarok that throw homing attacks. They do that weird thing where they stand close to you and then just magically, like, get swept towards you like a magnet. And they also, like, there's no staggering them. They don't, again, I talked about the whole thing where they reuse enemies for the purpose of power fantasy in the last game. In this one, they reuse enemies, but they never want to give you that power fantasy. So even grunt enemies later, they just get super armor. And super armor that has elemental resistance to it. It's just, and then you're right, they do give that thing where it's like at any time you can die from a few hits. It's like, are you freaking joking me? This is not good scaling. This is lazy scaling. Super lazy. So yeah, it's just final score. We left it off as a C that was dangling towards a C- if it really was bad. And it wasn't necessarily bad, but it was boring. God of War is a straight up C. But I'm telling you right now, if you play just the main story, it's a C. If you play the main story and you play all of the side content, I can see times where it would be worth it in the pacing. Sorry, I'm shouting. I'm shouting at this point. I'm sorry, chat. I hope I'm not piquing anybody's ear, but I'm getting worked up, I guess. Covered in Bifrost, brother. Let me drink some water. If you play all of this game, 100% complete it, not just beat it, but complete it. If you beat this game, it's a C. If you complete this game, I really feel it's a C-. Because the usage of this environment and the usage of quests that they have to make it just pointless collectathon that already stresses the not very good combat, it makes it worse because you're dragging out something that should not have been overemphasized. Now, if you like collectathons, and there are people that do, even though it's a very 90s, early 2000s thing where we had our era of pointless collectathons and it's growing up as children. That's what we liked. It's like, oh, look at all the shinies over there. I want to collect all the shinies. Yeah, like we grew up on that and that's fine. But like Kratos said, you need to do better. And this game was not intended for children to chase shinies. Well, actually, who was this game for? This game did not feel like it was for God of War fans. I'm going to tell you right now. Wesley, I got back from shift duty. Hey, hope you had a good day. How goes the discussion dissection so far along with the solid criticism? Well, I suggest pairing this with part 1, which was the finale / credits of the last one. If you're just jumping in and this is a replay, the first half hour was us watching my 2018 deep cut, which, by the way, if you like that format, please consider becoming a channel member or a patron, because for just the low price of whatever the minimum is I set for it, you can absolutely just enjoy it like this for all the recapitations. So you got a nice little free sample here. This is also the reason why I do not review games, because I'm too damn honest. And that's not the popular thing to be. Popular and honesty seldom go together when it comes to media consumption. Anyway, yeah. This is a game that I can say you can just watch the cutscenes for. What was I saying before I got off on that tangent? I was talking about the grading. I was about to make up another point that I forgot. I just lost my train of thought. Now I'm annoyed because I lost my train of thought. That's how you know this is live. What else about Ragnarok? Oh, that's right. I was talking about who this game was made for. That's right. So this game isn't really made for God of War fans. I don't believe it is. I would be interested if anybody in the videos that were recommended, and if you want to recommend some now in chat, by all means, I'll watch them. We'll watch them together. That's what tonight's all about. Is we're going to watch along, and I'm going to interrupt points as I see fit. Not to necessarily argue with somebody else's video or put them down, but if I see bullshit on a video, I'm calling out bullshit. And because God of War people expect amazing fight vistas, compelling storytelling, Kratos being the driving force behind a lot of it, and of course the battling needs to be satisfying. The raw brutality needs to be satisfying. Even if you yourself saying you're going to be better, you still ended up killing a god. You're still killing mythical creatures. And all we're doing is just like rated T for teen stuff. This game is rated T for teen, but it pretends it's rated M. This game pretends it's catered towards adult, but it is childish in its storytelling, childish in its caricatures of character writing, and childish in its pacing and content providing, which is fine. It's going to sound very negative the way I phrase this, but I assure you I'm not attacking anybody. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the guy behind you. This game was made for people who do not like action games. It is straight up made for people who want to... Because there's some action games that are made for people who do not like challenge and skill, like Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is a game where the game makes you feel like you're a strong badass, but it's actually a very simple, I don't want to say baby game, but it is low learning curve is the polite way I'll put it. A very easy curve to play this game. And this game is not even for those people who want to feel like they're a badass without actually being a badass in the game. You know, gameplay-wise. This is for people who don't even like playing the game outside of pushing the control stick forward. Half of the QuickTime events you can't fail, as we found out. This game is a 70-30 split of just cutscenes that aren't even interactive cutscenes and actual gameplay. And like I said, and I'll keep saying it, this gameplay is not that deep. I went through the entirety, even fighting King Hrolf, just spamming runic attacks and light attacks. The entirety of that whole fusion elemental system, I'm sure you can pull off some amazing combos to be even more efficient, but you don't need it, is my point. This was made for people who want to feel like they're enjoying an Epic God of War game, who don't actually want to play an Epic God of War game. That's who this game was made for. I welcome anybody right now to challenge my perspective on that, because that is the way I genuinely feel. Not as an argument, but do you feel that is like who this was aimed towards? Do you feel this was genuinely aimed at a God of War franchise fan? This is the 9th game in the God of War franchise, may I remind you. It was made for the accessibility push Sony is going for. It is fine, but to diminish a story. So here's the thing. C does not mean a bad thing, by the way. I know you didn't say this, Hydra, and I know you're cool with it. But C, for people who are not familiar with my tier rating scale, C is just average. You can absolutely have a lot of fun with an average game. And there are plenty of people who love... I can't remember who said it, but somebody's like, I actually like the Pointless Collectathon. That's cool. Then they absolutely made it for you, and you're going to have a great time because there's a lot of pointless collection. I'm glad that you found enjoyment in this game. Trust me, I'm genuinely glad. There are people who absolutely, this is their favorite game. That's fine. This is not there to invalidate your feelings. There are a lot of games that I put in the C category that are average. They're just highly polished average. You can have a cheeseburger that's just like on the commercials, the most amazing thing in the world, and you actually get it, and it's just kind of meh. They really hammered home at every level they considered on how to make it accessible. I wonder, how are we choosing to define accessibility? Because I notice accessibility is used a little too liberally, where some people argue accessibility as anybody can play this game, and other people use accessibility as people who normally struggle to conventionally play a video game, like they have a physical disability or something like that. Those people should play a game. When I hear accessibility, I hear people sometimes think they mean both. And I want to have another word that clarifies the former, because I think accessibility should belong to the people that have challenges, really actual challenges, like physically or mentally or something like that, biologically, that prevent them from conventionally enjoying this. Like, I saw some people really enjoy, and I thought it was fascinating, that they were actually blind and they were able to play The Last of Us Part 2. Regardless of how you feel about that game, the fact that a blind person actually has a video game that they can play, that's kind of cool. So on that note, like, that's cool. That's a highly accessible product. However, on the other end of that spectrum, most of us who play this game are not physically disabled to the point where we can't pick up a controller and press all 16 buttons on it. This, I feel, is how can we lower the approach to people who want to jump into a game? And I've seen that a couple different ways. Some people want to, in a long series, they don't use a number. That's why God of War 2018 doesn't have God of War 4 on it, even though it's technically God of War 4. Because when you say God of War 4, the average consumer who has never played God of War is going to look at it and be like, oh, I guess I need to play God of War 1, 2, and 3, even though there's actually 7 games before God of War 4. And they really don't have the time, place, or accessibility to do that. It's not an option for them. It's off the table. That level of accessibility. It's better to have a new starting point, an onboarding point. But it feels like we need to present a game that people that don't normally play video games can also play. It feels like it's that. Wesley, it feels like it's suffering from an identity crisis. You know, that's a better way of rephrasing what I'm saying. It really does feel like Ragnarok's suffering an identity crisis. It wants to carry on the God of War name without actually carry on what makes God of War God of War. And when you're 9 games into a series, you really do not get the luxury of redefining common conceptions and conventions about your series. That's not saying you can't pivot in a different interesting direction. You take a gamble in doing so, but you did it with 2018, but then you took Ragnarok and you pivoted again in a way that was not necessarily paying off. A lot of Ragnarok is kind of riding on the shoulders of 2018. But if you take 2018 out of account, Ragnarok on its own merits, very questionable. There are good things to like about it. There are absolutely good things to like about it. but we have to put in the context of it's a God of War game. What does being a God of War game entail, you may ask? We'll get to that when we do a watch-along for the God of War series coming sometime in whenever the hell I do all the rest of those recaps. Not a high priority. Haha, that was me. I don't know which one you said that. I'm just sorry. KO, to be honest, I like it. The new games added better defense. It depends on your playstyle, and it's not that easy at all. KO, I'm going to politely disagree with you. These are very easy games. I will say that Ragnarok is more punishing. It absolutely is more punishing because it does require you to parry, block, and dodge a lot more. You can't just soak up hits and just all that. So I will say that there is that going for it. So I will say I agree with you 100% that the new games add more defense. That is very true. They give you that shield, they expect you to use that shield. And that's just combat design. Wesley, you can have fun with an average game, but you have a worse time with an average game if it's not engaging, fun, and does the opposite of what a game is setting out to do. To me, a good game, if you ask me, what do you think is a good game? I have a very simple answer for that. A good game is a game that for you is either fun, fascinating, or fulfilling. What do I mean by that? That's why I call it my trifecta. If it fits one of those, and it could fit all of those, or even none of those. If it's none of those, then it's not a good game. It has to hit at least one of those. If the game is fun, it's just a fun factor. It doesn't have to be interesting, doesn't have to be intellectual, doesn't even have to be new. You're just having fun. And that's better than just being a time killer. There are time killers that people say, I'm just playing it to kill time. If you're playing it to kill blah, 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 to kill time, and you're choosing something that's not fun, you're bad with your time. You might as well get some value out of it. Value yourself and your time more. So a game should be, if it's just fun, that's a good enough answer for if a game is good. That's all it needs to be. That's not the only thing it should be, though. If a game is not necessarily fun, but it is fascinating, as in there's interesting things to talk about, it is thought-provoking. Sometimes a lot of those games with impact, or those that have really big social messages, or very profound in their narrative or message or moral or twists, or exciting, or generate some sort of discussion outside of the game, or change the way we approach like a video game, like something that's revolutionary, introduces a new mechanic that we never thought of, or some new technology that we've never seen, something interesting. If it does that, then it's also a good game, even if it's not necessarily fun or interesting. Or is it fulfilling? What I mean by fulfilling? Fulfilling means it needs to scratch an emotional itch. Are you looking to be scared in a horror game? Are you looking to be paranoid? Are you looking to be saddened by some tragedy? Are you looking to laugh at a comedy? How is this game fulfilling you? If it does that, then it accomplished what it meant to do, and that makes it good. It may not be original, it may be very simple, it may not even necessarily be fun, but if it hits you, if it scratches that itch, like sometimes I just want to kill zombies, man. It doesn't have to be profound. I just want to smash some zombie heads, see the splatter, see some cool weapons, and I just want to kill some zombies, you know? Or just shoot some people in a multiplayer. It doesn't have to be that deep, but if it hits that itch, it's good. If you can hit any one of those in the trifecta, you are good. That is what I consider a good game. Purposeful. I personally have only played snippets of the original series. I basically started 2018 for reference. And that's fine. Oh, that's what you meant. Yeah. And that's okay, because that's exactly the point of 2018. It was meant as an onboarding of new people, a new generation. It's something that as you get older, the next God of War game that comes 10 years from now, you will also be like, this is nothing like God of War 2018. Let me tell you about good games. They don't make good games anymore. And you'll be there too. Trust me. Just stick around long enough. Some people rate too much as the point of games should be art. The point of games should be fun. The point of games should be technology and pushing the medium. It can be all those things. It can be one of those things. It's okay. It's okay. Different things are good for different reasons. It's not just black and white. It's not just an either or situation. Alright, so that is my finale for thoughts on God of War Ragnarok. Thank you everybody who stuck around for this journey. It ended up just being an average game. if I want to be super salty, I could be. It ended up being a game that was not a Game of the Year award winner. Take that. Or Best Director. Can you believe this game won Best Art Direction? What kind of crock is that? This game does not have good art direction. It has a photorealistic art direction, which makes it just the same as every other photorealistic game out there. And if you really want to split hairs, a game that did better photorealism than God of War was COD Modern Warfare 2. That game has better photorealism. So maybe that game should have won Best Art Design if we're going on that. Oh my god. Whatever. Game Awards was a crock. The most interesting thing was Fluke Guy and Invader Kid who got arrested. Whatever. Lynn, I weigh my game towards fun. If I don't enjoy playing it, definitely don't care about the artistry or visuals. Hey, that's okay. That still makes it a good game. Anyway, now let's move on to the next part of the watch along, which is going to be, we're going to watch reviews of other people, of other content creators. I'm going to go ahead and preface this, especially if you're the content creator who I'm watching a video of. Hey man, we're all in the same biz. I know you're doing the hustle. You got to put out things out there. I'm not attacking you, but I will be attacking your points in the video because I mostly want to look at evidence based on support. If you're just like gushing and fangasming over it, hey man, that's on you. That's your emotional reaction to a game. I just don't find much value in it because, no offense, I already have my emotions and opinions on this game. I do not care about your emotions and opinions on this game, stranger on the internet. And that goes both ways. I don't expect you to care about my takes on it either. But let's find something discussion worthy about this because I want to understand why you would place this on anything higher than average. If you are going to claim this is excellence in gaming, I really need to know your standards of reference. I really need to understand how you are supporting that idea. I am not here to shoot you down. I want to hear you out. But if you present a bad point or you do not support it with evidence, I'm going to call you out. First things first, I need to get some water. So we're going to take a quick water break. Since we're going to be watching and critiquing and analyzing, I suggest you also get some water too, just in case anybody gets a little salty. So take a very quick couple minute break, grab some water. We're going to be right back. And if you have video suggestions, you can't post it in the chat because YouTube doesn't allow links. However, you can just tell me the descriptor or the content creator, and I will go just pull up the video. We'll watch it together. All right? We'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So just to recap the TLDR for everyone that stick around. Is God of War Ragnarok a bad game? No. Is God of War Ragnarok a good game? No. God of War Ragnarok is an average game. It is highly polished mediocrity. However, I can see points where people can like specific parts about it. But as a package as a whole, I think it's just an average game. And compared to 2018, it is a bad sequel. So if you want to even take it and stretch it as far as to say, good game, bad sequel, I could agree with that. That's fine. Good game, bad sequel. That's the compromise I make. But it is just an average game. If you do not play Ragnarok, you will not be missing anything. That's another way of I sometimes weighting things of, is there any, do I miss anything by not playing this game? You miss nothing by not playing Ragnarok. You really don't. So first is Video Game Donkey. I've seen a couple of Donkey's videos. He very much he's an entertainer. So he likes to be goofy while at times being serious. Sometimes he makes interesting points, but he also likes to just kind of have fun with it. He very much has a deadpan delivery of humor, which I can appreciate. We can do Game Explain. Okay, we'll do Game Explain too. Make sure I don't forget. So we have Donkey, Actman, Under the Mayo, and Game Explain. Alright. 2.6 million views. I am jealous.
Millions find a low.
Oh, sorry, I don't have YouTube, whatever, so we have to watch these ads.
More visits and
we don't have to listen to them, though. Oh.
When I hear AAA video game, I think of stuff like this. Like AAA video game, oh, you mean this type of game, right? AAA level. God of War Ragnarok is the rarest type.
I'm gonna tell you right now, that's clearly meant to rile up people because, as you know, there's almost no better way of supporting your point by putting down somebody else. Very cheap shot, especially since AAA doesn't mean anything. So, yes, by all means, it makes your point look better on God of War when you insult another game that has nothing to do with it. Good job.
Type of AAA video game, and that it actually is a really good video game. In the first hour of this game, you race out of a collapsing forest on a dog sled, then you fight a giant bear, and then you fight Thor. That is how you do a fucking video game. Since the last God of War came out in 2008.
I just want to point out that first part he said is, so you thought excellence was just pushing forward on a scripted sequence that doesn't really change anything. A tutorial and 2 tutorial fights, both of which were just, one is a giant health pool sponge, and the other was a very underwhelming opening fight compared to Baldur in the last game. Cool. Now I know what your standards are.
There have been a lot of great action games. Games like Sekiro, Devil May Cry, Katana Zero, Neo 2, Hades, Metroid Dread, Elden Ring. Just 2 weeks ago I was playing Bayonetta 3.
All those games are better than Ragnarok.
Been Tekken, okay? But Ragnarok subtly builds on a foundation which has aged pretty gracefully in the face of such heavy competition.
I like how he's admitting that it's old-fashioned and simplistic, which is true.
The key word.
Alexander Hill, did you think the story was an upgrade over the first? For Ragnarok? Absolutely not. Ragnarok's story was absolutely a downgrade. Both in scale, storytelling, characterization, pacing, and just the plot hooks itself.
Word in describing Ragnarok's combat is balance. It's challenging but not unfair. It's flashy without taking control from the player. It's simplistic but still lets you get a little fancy.
That's true, I agree with him on that. It's very simplistic, yeah. Get fancy. He's just spamming light attack.
I'm gonna hit this man with the Looney Tunes surprise. Where'd the floor go? One of my biggest criticisms of the last God of War is how it would recycle a lot of its mini-bosses. This game does not do that.
Yes, it does.
You know, Funko
you fight the same crocodile 6 times.
These these bosses. I went into this game expecting the sequel to God of War, but really what we got here is the sequel to God of War and then the sequel to that game. Ragnarok is God of War 2 and 3 in one game. That's
which is
how many
unfortunately
crazy
true.
boss
It is
fights
2
are in
games in
this.
one.
My favorite boss, I don't want to spoil it, but your goal is to break a big cold.
Oh my god, his favorite boss was the grandma fight? Jesus. Also, these dragon fights were a joke. They were so easy. All the drakes and dragons in this game were just a snore.
If there's one obvious flaw with God of War's gameplay, it's
No
the
good
traversal.
presentation.
It sucks. You look at other Sony games like Spider-Man and Ratchet and Clank.
That's
and those
because the
games'
traversal's a
traversal
loading
is just
screen.
as good, if not better, than the combat. But what makes God of War special is how it marries fun combat with engaging storytelling. Right from its opening shot, Ragnarok masterfully draws you back into its world with incredible acting performances.
That's
There's
true.
a much
It is good
heavier
acting.
emphasis this time on building up the world of God of War. There's a lot of side quests and lore to uncover, but for me,
Out of all the choices in Alfheim, you chose a random part of the ceiling and a wall. There's way more visually interesting parts in even the Elven Temple than that.
the most fulfilling part is just soaking in these beautiful environments. There is more artistry in some of God of War's doors than there is in entire video games.
That's hilarious because he's looking at the door to Tyr's temple, which was from the last game. So the point he just made doesn't even apply to this game.
The sandy tempest of Elfheim, obscure lantern-lit bones of a mammoth creature, beams of moonlight peer through the leaves of a gungle tree in Mufelkin. Heat seems to ooze out of the
So he does in
screaming,
fact enjoy
bubbling
the fact
pits
that you
of
can stand around and
lava
look at
islands
environments you
from
can't explore and
Mario
interact with.
64. There
Alright,
are so
that's
many
fine.
creatures and little details everywhere in this game that sometimes you
There
just
are
have
a lot
to
of little
stop and
creatures.
savor it all. Yes, this is the 700th open world game where you lead a rebel force.
This is not an open world game. Don't you dare. This is not an open world game.
Against a tyrannical dictatorship. You've seen this story before, but you've never seen it executed on this level before.
You're right. I have not seen this story executed on this level of incompetence before. I didn't. What a weird summary. So to him, the story is a rebel faction opposing this grand army. That kind of isn't the whole story, though. That ends up being like a miniature character arc at the very end. That's not the overall story. That's not the story of Ragnarok.
This is big budget blockbuster entertainment with little interest in rehashing the previous game's story.
Which is a shame, because the previous game's story was pretty good.
There is some dialogue that'll make you groan.
Everything's okay, right? Yeah.
There actually is
just
dialogue that will make me cringe,
In a magical
yes.
force that shouldn't exist. Talking to another giant and she's...
Boy.
The scope of this game is much wider than the original, bringing back the original cast while introducing many, many new faces like Angra Boba, Tyr, Amir, Mimir, Fenrir, Munko, Mumra, and the funny squirrel guy that I like.
Simply throw your axe and strike the chimes and...
Man, Ratatoskr was like such a useless character. Can you even call it a character? Because all he is just a glorified quest giver. He doesn't do anything in this game except spit out a lot of, I guess, supposed to be funny, comedy relief, and he just gives you quests. That's all he does. He serves no purpose. He's just another comedy relief character in what is already a series of comedy relief characters in this game. Now that I think about it, there aren't too many comedy relief characters in this game.
and I will attend to your needs. I am already here, Master Kratos. Perhaps there was some confusion. This is for calling me out here, not for when I am here. Do you just like hearing the sound of the child?
In the last game, the plot was to take the mom's ashes up a mountain. In this game, the plot, I give up. You definitely lose that simplicity and focus from the last game, but there's
That is
a
true.
new kind of fun in trying to detangle such a massive web of characters.
Kratos? Snack?
I do not need a snack.
Ragnarok is Dr. Phil's greatest episode. It's a story about 3 fathers, 3 mothers, and 3 children. 2 parents want to shelter their children. Another 2 are depressed because their sons got killed by the other dad. Then there's the fun dad. He's the most evil one of them all. After the game, Loki is impregnated by a horse. That's what it says on Wikipedia. Fuck. With so many characters taking the stage, it's a miracle that it doesn't collapse. It's a very
It doesn't collapse because it was never standing up to begin with.
segmented story with a lot of video gamey distractions in between. Destroy 4 rat nests. But just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. While it all hinges on this massive battle, the story unfolds more like an intimate mystery, giving its incredible cast many scenes to flex their acting muscles. Just like The Matrix, God of War Ragnarok is a technologically advanced thrill ride where rebelling against prophecy only seems to seal your fate. It may not be high art, but it is definitely high entertainment, showcasing many talents at the peak of their powers. This game will surprise you, it'll make you laugh, it might even make you tear up, and it will keep your hands glued to the controller all the way until its action-packed finale. When the credits finally rolled on this massive conquest, there was only one thing I could say. God damn.
I see. You're deliberately attempting to push me into some sort of emotional outburst, aren't you? Well, I'm not so easily swayed, my good man. Stop it! Stupid chime! Oh dear. I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from.
Alright. I like how he hand waves away. It's like, yeah, the combat's really simple. Yeah, the plot's not really that interesting. Yeah, it's unfortunately unfocused and complicated. But it was a really good movie with really good graphics, a lot of dialogue, and good acting. So, are we rating a game or are we rating a movie here? Because I really felt like he was trying to review it as a movie. Anyway. The other person that somebody was... That didn't really help me understand why people liked this game, unless the takeaway is, I like watching movies, therefore I like Ragnarok. Because that apparently was Donkey's take. He was just more into the, I like the entertaining movie aspect of it. The spectacle of it. Alright, well somebody said Act Man. Did Ackman even make a God of War?
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 22.
I don't think he even made a Ragnarok one. What if somebody recommended that? He didn't even make a Ragnarok video. So if he made one, he's either making it, but he didn't make one. Never mind. Somebody else said Under the Mayo. God of War Ragnarok was... It's an hour long? Oh my god. I guess I can't complain. I also talked about this game for over an hour. But I wanted somebody who liked God of War Ragnarok to support their points. It sounds like he felt God of War Ragnarok was ruined. Alexander has skill up? Okay. I can tell you right now, I've seen a couple skill ups reviews and I don't think he reviews very well. Or rather... his method of review does not match my own tastes in review. Spoiler free? Then what are you talking about? Whoa, this is a sponsored review. I don't know, man. Sponsored reviews are very weighted. Because if you're a sponsored review, you do not get to be honest. And you have to talk about certain talking points. That's the agreement of a sponsored review. I know this because I've once been selected for a sponsored review. And that's what they tell you when they give you that free code. It's not, here's a free code, you can say whatever you want. No. In order to establish that free code relationship, you have to oblige certain things. Sponsored reviews are sus. It's also 34 minutes for a spoiler-free review. That's a sponsored review. Okay, let's take a look at Game Explain first, and it sounds like we have a bunch of people that want to talk a lot about this. I want to do the shortest one first, and we'll work our way up. I don't know how to... I guess I forgot that there's not an extra E in Game Explain.
Oh, what happened?
Man, these guys just shit out content that fast. Good lord. I guess when your videos are like less than 10 minutes and some of this shit's an hour and a half, it's easy to shit out content. But hey, that's the way you play the YouTube game. Ragnarok review. Do they even do reviews? Oh, they do. 21 minutes, falls short, I guess. Was this a sponsored review? I have to check now.
Ugh, this rental car.
Because if it's a sponsored review, they have to say it's a sponsored review. Alright, it's not a sponsored review. Okay, we'll give this a watch. Oh, that's the other thing I have to criticize Ragnarok on. The environments that you fight... Ah, shit, it's a sponsored review. It's also a podcast format. This is a podcast clip. Well, I guess what I'm doing is technically podcasty too, isn't it? Alright, so before we listen to their sponsored review, I do have to point out that another thing that's very boring in Ragnarok versus even 2018 is where you have your fights. They feel like video game arenas. They're just wide open circles. 95% of all of your fights are in these wide open circles or wide open areas. Two reasons why I believe that is. Number one, I believe this game has because a lot of enemies use tracking attacks and use that weird magnetic gap closer to you, it doesn't work if there's objects in the environment. Really, like a lot of collision or physics or any sort of objects that can pose as problems, other than the random shit Kratos just throws at you. And the other is, I feel it's just bad AI.
What have you done?
If you want to see someone crap on God of War, look up Quantum TV's take on Ragnarok.
You're one of the
we'll
few
check it out, I
people on
guess.
planet Earth that's played.
I don't want to see people crap on God of War. What I want to see people talk about why they loved God of War Ragnarok, but also defend it in such a way where they support it with evidence from the game, not just my feelings arguments.
And finished the most hotly anticipated game of maybe the last 4 years.
Does it deliver 2018's God of War? I'm going to tell you right now the answer is no. The beauty of God of War 2018, I already know that. All right, let's start with his main points. I don't want to be here all night.
I am blown away by how frequently God of War Ragnarok does this exact structure. Hey, you've never heard of this new person, object, or power. I'm going to send you on a 3 to 5 hour quest to go get that person, object, or power.
That's true.
You go and get it. It either isn't there, doesn't matter, or you do get it and you never speak of it again.
That's so true. I said the same thing. 3 out of the major arcs in Ragnarok, it's a useless thing where it's just a MacGuffin chasing. 100% true.
And then you move on to the next person, object, or power, and
that is true. That's
a valid criticism. And I know I'm not the only person feeling this way, because the characters in the game verbalize their frustration after more than one long quest in this game, in this pattern. I had one of Kratos' companions that he is traveling with say to me, "Wow, that was a waste of time."
That's true.
And
all right, so I agree with him too much on that.
Verbalize what you think your player is.
What Ragnarok story tips? I'm curious. What does he say?
So that this whole story of this game is about preparing for Ragnarok. This fated future that is going to bring the end to all of these realms, and specifically, what the characters are worried about here is that you have Kratos, who is worried that he cannot escape this path of endless violence, and then you have Atreus, who is worried that his identity, the mysteries surrounding who he really is, these mysteries are inexorably tied to the betrayal of people he loves. So both questions of fate, both questions of destiny, and our backdrop is the destiny of the realms of Ragnarok.
I didn't even know there was an accessibility option to illuminate the climbable sections. I should have turned that on when I was doing a collection. Because sometimes you're like, I need to get up there, but where's the access point to climb things?
And that's
because, this game, gives you a quote-unquote hook shot, but you can't just hook shot anywhere because that would involve creating an interactable environment, and they don't want to actually do work, so you can only climb up very specific sections.
That's where the game starts. And then 25 hours go by. And not a lot changes. And nothing is really... people don't change or grow.
Man, it's almost like there's nothing but
moment
padding.
of catharsis where you feel the narrative inevitability of course we have to go get the Blades of Chaos, of course we do, is replaced by, hey, I know you've never heard of this before, but there's this object that's going to be really useful to you. Go get it. And the magic's gone.
I don't know if I call it magic, but yeah, the story hooks for a lot of the things in this game were not that good. Absolutely shallow. It was very much, go over there and collect the thing, go over here, talk to the guy. Oh, the thing you just did was just a waste of time. Yeah, but hey, go over here and do that thing.
And again, I want to say that, like, when Kratos and Atreus have their moments together and the cutscene is flying, it's not that these characters aren't capable of evoking emotion. I love these characters, they totally are. But it's the moving parts, it's what we do to prepare for Ragnarok, for this huge battle. We do all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, what it comes down to is a boss fight, just like any other. And it's not about anything. It's about the end of the world.
I said that too, where a lot of the end of this game, for a lot of the story beats, they don't go anywhere. They're either left hanging or they don't matter. I do agree with that.
And I can see what they're aiming for. I see the thematic pushes they're trying to do, but because
puzzles are worse than ever. That's not even a speaking point. Everybody agrees with that.
Crescendoing in this
Puzzles
20
suck.
hours that I am describing.
Combat has improved. I'm curious how he feels this way, because I feel, before I listen to this, combat took a step down from
You stay in your car because
Ragnarok from 2018, because in 2018 you actually had techs with your equipment, like different ways of fighting, incorporating different fighting styles. In Ragnarok, you really don't have that, because they want you to focus on combining elemental effects. They really want you to do that. And there are some techs to it, but they're not the same techniques that you had in the last game. They're very much simplified versions. So I'm curious how we feel it improved, because the AI is just as dumb. The spamming is worse. And a lot of enemies have homing attacks in this, which is not fundamentally interesting combat-wise.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. I feel like I wasn't super interested in the skill trees of God of War 2018. Like, I got my skills and it was all fine and good, but I kind of felt like every additional skill, every new ability in this game was noticeably sick. There's a new thing you can do with every weapon where, like, it's tied to the triangle button. So normally you, like, recall your axe. And if you hold down the triangle button, you can, like, you go, and you, like, charge it up with ice power. So that the next move you do, it's, like, super icy move. And it's just, like, man, it is just so fun to do.
I feel like this is the part of the sponsored review where they have to talk about the elemental weaponry. It's not that interesting that you freeze things with the axes. It just does double damage for a little bit of time. It's just a power up. It's a charge move.
And
it's not that deep, man. In the last game, you still froze and burned things with your blades and your axe. Like, it's not like they're acting like it's brand new. I feel this is the talking point they get from being a sponsored review. They have to talk about that. Favorite combat encounters, please indulge me.
This was, so one of my most fun combat experiences in this game. There are, like, these little champion fights that you can do that's, like, kind of generic looking enemies, but you summon them and you go, okay, this is good.
So the optional super
It's
bosses
gonna be a big
got
battle, let's go. And they're more or less these one-on-one optional fights. And I come across one in the story. And
you actually, the game presents it to you, but it's optional. You don't have to do it as part of the story. Momo, how's it going today?
Mimir is, like, on my belt, and he's like, oh, I don't know about this, my dude. Like, maybe come back later. And he's, like, warning me about it, and I'm like, no, I'm the God of War. Let's go. And I do this fight, and I am outmatched. This guy, it only takes him a few hits to totally drop my health bar. But I watched him and I go, no, like, I understand this combat. I can get the timing down. I can figure this guy out. I lose again. The UI is now telling me, hey, dude, you can leave. Just don't do this.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, no, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I get distracted because my dog is barking at a pair of shoes. And I'm getting questions from the kitchen from my girlfriend, and I don't have the rhythm. I'm not focused, and I go, okay, this time I'm gonna do it, and it was like
Yes, and he eventually succeeded. Amazing.
at the god. And the key thing here, Joey, was that during this fight, I never once had to look at that radial UI element that surrounds Kratos that tells him where the enemies are surrounding him. And I think that's a big contributing factor to why I felt so much satisfaction from that fight.
How do you need a radar when there's one guy in the arena with you? He's the only guy in the arena. What do you need to track other people for? What does he mean by that point? I didn't use the radar to track the one guy in the room with me. Wow, amazing. Two golf claps for that. Amazing.
Because I like and just trying to figure out where they are. And it's not nearly as
I got a
fun
situational awareness. That's madcap. Third person over the shoulder games are terrible for situational awareness. What he is doing though, which is smart, which is repositioning to make sure your back's against the wall and enemies are not there. But he's not showing them many times where enemies will purposely move behind you to flank you.
And they shoot at you. And
I think because we're getting close to the run time here, I do want to ask you. So out of your 25-hour playthrough, but I just want to ask.
That's about how long my playthrough was.
Throughout most of your playthrough, like, because I hear a lot of criticisms thrown at this game. They're not exactly unfounded because, like, from what you told me, especially about the story, that frustrated me too.
Yeah.
But I want to know, did this sour you ultimately on the entire experience, or did you have fun most of the time?
I was pretty sour.
Ooh, hot take. I wouldn't say I was okay. I was kind of sour a lot of this game, but I was honestly more bored most of it. I would say I was mixed between boredom and souring, because souring not because what the game was doing was bad, it wasn't on the same level as the previous game. So even though it was a step down, it wasn't bad. It was just a step down. Because the last one was great in many areas, and this one just ended up being okay. So that was where I was like, how'd you mess this up? How'd you drop the ball?
I think...
Other than the legitimately dumb parts of the story. The story, to me, receives the most amount of heavy criticism.
This game...
The story is the one part I will say, and the characterization is the part where I will say this game was actually bad. Was in context of the story and characters.
Really highlights for me how much the directorial vision of
Galax Fighter, hi from Sweden, hello.
2018 carried a lot of weight.
Kalama, how you doing? Am I roasting shills? I'm trying to find... I have some recommendations. We're watching videos of people who are giving reviews of Ragnarok and really giving, like, high praise for it, but I'm trying to avoid sponsored reviews, because sponsored reviews are definitely the shill reviews. This is a shill review. They were sponsored. They did bring up a couple of criticisms that were definitely valid, but what they were defending, like the parts that they really thought were really good, were kind of mundane things that I suspect were part of the press talking kit.
And how much I was really invested in the small sentimental movements of the relationship between Kratos and Atreus. This game, their literal together relationship is so de-emphasized, and we spend a lot of time introducing characters and expanding the world in a way that
doesn't matter.
I never feel a payoff for it.
That's true. I agree with that. But the problem is, like, it sounds like
what I said about
he's overall very, like, meh on that. So
new iPhone 14 Pro
this isn't really the kind of video I'm looking for, to be honest with you. Somebody said, what was it? Quantum TV Ragnarok. Can't spell. Google, thank you. Dad of... Okay, 11 minutes. We're good with this. Is it sponsored? I can't tell. He doesn't have... Wow, this dude has... Klutzy King hates his review, apparently. Moist Critical. I do not like Moist Critical in general, his review format. He has, in my opinion, a pressure to comment on things he usually doesn't know anything about. He has a very shallow understanding and therefore shallow takes on things. That's not a criticism of Moist Critical himself. But Moist Critical, I know, is... He also does the thing that I... Like, you live your life. He makes a lot of money. But he's the type of guy who makes a lot of money and then pretends he's just a normal dude like you and me. And I don't like that.
Okay, honey, we really gotta go. Daddy printed out my...
Alright, so let's listen to... Did I cover Donkey? I did watch Donkey. Donkey's review was weak, man. But Donkey did say he wanted this God of War game and reviewed it like he was watching a movie. From that perspective, I understand. So... What the fuck's a Master TV calibrator? Is that a joke? So his enjoyment and takeaway was that it was a movie. And he liked it as a movie. I guess as a movie, I can't really argue with that. But as a game, nah. And he did also agree with a lot of the weaker points of the game itself, such as the plot, the storytelling, the simplistic combat, things like that.
Dad of War. Today I'm going to be giving you a review on it. Now, a lot of people have kind of already picked what side of the aisle they're going to be standing on. They either like the game or really hate.
It's a great game, God of War Ragnarok. I feel God of War Ragnarok is an okay game with a bad story, with great presentation. It has great presentation of a bad story. And everything else about it in terms of the usage of levels, the amount of filler content in it, the combat itself, it's all very average. If you enjoy collectathons, you will enjoy God of War Ragnarok, though. I will say that.
Hate the game for various reasons. I'm just going to be giving my take since reviews are subjective.
Oh, that's right.
Taken for...
Is this a sponsored review? Yeah, I didn't even use a description, so I guess it's not. Wow, this dude is generating some hate in the comments. I wonder what he says. To tilt
what
people.
It is, you don't have to agree with me. You can disagree all you want. And again, you can always agree. But I think we should talk about this game because I think it's actually pretty good and pretty bad at the same time. And we'll talk about why.
So right off the bat, he says it's pretty good and pretty bad at the same time. Like, how can you argue with that criticism? That seems pretty balanced as much as it can be. How could people like saying he hates the game? He literally just said, I think it's pretty good and pretty bad.
So if we look at the box art, it's kind of like...
Oh. Let's do my favorite thing to do.
Why.
I used to do this all the time. So, one of my favorite things to do back in the day when I was selling video games to the regular Joe was the back of the box. The back of the box of so many video games, you would be surprised how many people walk into a video game store and actually read the back of the box when the back of the box has some of the most ridiculous nonsense. And some people just literally take a look and just like really read it like it's something profound. So what I used to do is take the description of any movie or the back of any box, remove all adjectives, and see what the game is actually about. So we're going to try doing that here. So, embark on a journey as Kratos and Atreus struggle. Witness the relationship as they prepare for war. So that's the entire description if you remove away all modifiers on it. Embark on a journey as Kratos and Atreus struggle. Witness the relationship as they prepare for war. That's it. That's the description. That's the game description. Amazing. Every other bit of adjectives, adverbs, and modifying phrases are all just fluff. So the pre-order content was cosmetic, useless.
If we look at the box art, it's kind of like...
It's American storytelling, but great game. I am interested in terms of what you mean, American storytelling. You'll have to expand on that, because I'm curious what that means. As an American, I unfortunately cannot understand what it means to be American storytelling. I will say, though, that this felt like very cheap Marvel-level writing. It felt like this was meant for the Marvel crowd.
Meh. There's not like
And by that, I mean Marvel MCU.
a whole lot of crazy graphics going around, and I don't know.
I kind of like his background music, by the way.
Maybe I'm a little old school, but I like back in the day when they used to do that cool little thing, how they used to kind of put little cutscenes to show you what the game would be like, certain aspects of gameplay that they're highlighting. I wish they would have done that. Most games don't do that nowadays, so I guess we'll let that one go. But if we talk about further onto the additional offerings of the bonus characters and what they offer, so I guess maybe you can be happy if you like the color white and gold as, like, I don't know, like, he's a Spartan, so I would have expected like maybe like an exclusive Spartan outfit, maybe
That
the
actually would
OG
have been cool.
skins to be like a pre-order bonus.
That actually is a good idea.
Kind of like it's a colored version of an armor piece that is literally already in the game, and it just doesn't really feel very unique or exclusive. It kind of removes any real desire to have pre-ordered in the first place. So the pre-order bonus,
Yeah, especially since it's a recolor of existing gear. So far, he's kind of making solid points, not gonna lie.
this is definitely a little weak in my opinion there. The install size for God of War is basically 84 gigs if you're on PlayStation 5 and well over 100 if you're on PS4. Now, this is again in line with what we've seen, so we can't really be too...
He's talking about like tech specs and pre-order bonuses and the cover art. I will say that that's different. So far, this is a different sort of review.
critical here. Games are just going to be really large, so you're going to have to invest in storage. Though I will say it is annoying to see that the game is this big and the graphical improvements aren't really kind of in line with the game of this size.
I understand that. In terms of like the fidelity and attention to detail, it's marginal compared to the last one 4 years ago. I get that.
More on that later. Taking to the main menu, you can kind of see a couple different things. I mean, you have the typical story elements and options, but there's nothing really unique, right? And I think this is where these story games kind of, for a lot of people, where we heard a lot of the negative.
Americans are very good at cherry picking the bits of other stories and filling in the rest with whatever they want, such as based on a true story. That's true. Galaxy Fight is what you meant. Oh yeah, 100%. The American bastardization pattern that we do, 100% agree with you, Galaxy Fighter. As Americans, we absolutely do that. We bastardize so many stories for entertainment purposes. Americanization. If that's what you meant, I 100% agree. We do that a lot.
Negativity come from,
especially like when it comes to mythology.
Kind of play into part, because typically when you have a game that's story driven, the only thing that matters in a story game after the story is beaten is its replayability, the replay value. This game, like many other story games,
has no
have
replayability.
Very little replay value because it's just repetitive and it doesn't really do a whole lot to change that.
That's
true. It would have been nice to see, for example, a challenge mode of some sort included in the game as a separate option in the main menu, to where when you click on it, like old school games, there's all kinds of crazy challenges that really put your gear and your skills that you spent getting up to the test, and it just doesn't happen that way. Another problem is,
that's
even
true,
though
especially
that game
since Muspelheim doesn't really
some
challenge
sort
you
of
that way.
replayability
That's
through
very
challenge
true.
modes or other unique custom modes that we would have loved to see, it just does not have that replayability because it doesn't have chapters. I don't know how many games that are story driven they like to make where it's just a one playthrough and then you restart all over again. I think that kind of defeats the purpose, especially in a game plus mode, for example. I feel like, so you're already acknowledging I beat the game, I've already got all my stats, I've already got all my gear. Let me pick what chapter and what part of the game I want to...
Or dude, Ragnarok did this and Jedi Fallen Order did this, and it pisses me off. If you're going for the cleanup and you have to go all the effing way, all the way over there to go pick up your thing, and there's no fast travel back to a warp point. You have to walk all the way back to the nearest like teleportation point. There's no ease of use to just doing cleanup. I do agree with him on that. He's making solid points. Why do people hate this review? I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Play. The only way to do this is to have a pre-existing game save onto your drive and then play from that point, but that's kind of pointless because you're not always going to have a bunch of game saves, so I think that's really annoying. Now this next piece I took a lot of heat for, and I really don't care, because I still feel the same way. The pacing of the story is too slow.
That's
Simply
true.
Put, they spend
That's
too
true.
many hours on screen talking, to the point where a lot of people have called this a cutscene simulator.
That's
it didn't
true.
really feel like you were being dropped into this action game. It felt a lot like it was a very slow opening of a movie, and
That's
not
true.
a very good one. And it's to the point where the pacing of the story has a very roller coaster vibe. It goes up, down. You don't really know like what's happening until they get to certain parts of the story, and you go, okay, that's what you're referencing here. It's just, I don't know. I didn't like
The
the
pacing
writing
is awful.
personally. I thought it had a lot of room for improvement until the latter half of the game. Now, once you get to about midway through the game, it's pretty engaging, and the action scenes are a lot more. So the cutscenes are a lot more forgivable. But in that opening scene, you know, the boy with his wolf, you know, he's crying over the wolves, but then he has to fight a wolf, and it's just all this stupid contradictory stuff that I just, from a writing perspective, did not appreciate. Again, that's to each their own, but that's my take on that.
Now, story's
More
poorly paced.
unforgivingly, though, I think is the way that the story kind of doesn't have a built upon theme. And what I mean is like, okay, so in the last game, he was a dad. We all know that he's trying to build his son up and all that stuff. And now they're trying to establish the opening story again as him being a dad. We already know that, so don't spend the first half of the game establishing the fact that he's a father. We get it. But the whole game plays on the theme that he's a father, hence the name of this review, Dad of War. Even to the final boss, it's all about your children and being a dad. Did we really need a Kratos like that? I don't think we did. Now, again, personal opinion. That's what a review is. But again, I really can't stand the pacing of it, though. Now, the art style...
I do agree. Well, I agree with the pacing comment. The perspective on what Kratos should be, like you said, that's his perspective, so I can't really, criticize that or say that's just his take. He feels Kratos as that. I will agree with him, though. They really do pound the fact that Kratos is trying to really focus on his role as a father in this to an almost obsessive, distracting degree. I would agree with that. So far, I'm not really seeing hot takes on this. This Quantum guy is kind of spitting facts for a lot of this.
The style of this game can be characterized as one thing in my personal book. A little lazy. Because if you really look at it, it just loses a lot of the high next-gen aspects that we were
I also want to say I really like the
and
music
to the
in
point where you're
these
in
shows.
performance mode. There is no good reason why you can't be in performance mode at, say, 1440, 60 FPS with maxed out textures and resolution.
Actually, that's a good point.
It doesn't happen here.
I actually completely forgot about that. There was a controversy before the game came out that this game only runs at 30 FPS. Even when you put it on any of the modes, it only does 30. It's capped at 30 FPS. It doesn't do 60 at any point. I forgot about that controversy. Nobody's really bringing this up, but this guy is. Hey, that's a point. Galax Fighter, don't think Odin would backstab the dwarf not in our mythology. Galax, trust me, I can definitely say a lot of Americans butcher Norse mythology, both in our renditions, our interpretations, and our pronunciations. Trust me, fully aware.
Now, I, again, similarly receive flack from players that love the game, and
I will say this, though. He seems to be very defensive on what the feedback he's getting. He's not really stating his point to state it. He's saying he's re-emphasizing the point of people being negative or criticizing him. I don't know. He doesn't really need that. He should be a little more confident in what he's saying.
apologize all of its flaws away, but I'm not one of those people. For me, I really would have liked them to implement some form of a high-resolution mode that has really tack-sharp visuals.
That's true. They should have had a high
You can always
FPS
go into
mode.
performance mode, but that runs at 30 FPS.
Yeah.
And that is a joke on next-gen consoles.
That
So
is true.
there's no point in using it if you're like me and you bought a PS5 for high frame rates. Which kind of goes into the next thing. The higher the frame rates, the worse the visuals get. That's just how the game plays. And I think for me, when you combine that in with the dated mechanics, it gets to be
The
really
mechanics are
lazy
dated.
because it runs exactly like the last game.
It's like, what is this game
Moves,
struggling with
acts,
that you can't do
like,
60
it's just-
FPS?
It's a copy and paste.
It's so
I would
weird.
Really love to see
You don't have
some more
high
of the
quality
fluid
animations.
gameplay come back that we
You don't
saw
have
in the
fast-paced
game.
gameplay.
I love
Like,
how
what is this game
Chaos
struggling to
Blades
keep up
Blades of
with?
Chaos
I actually agree
were
with this
just
guy.
more swingy than they were in the older games, a lot faster than they are here, where it feels a little bit more sticky, especially when you hold the right bumper to pull off that combo. It never really feels...
Yeah, that's another thing too, is this game auto combos for you. Like, you just hold a button and, like, Kratos does a chain combo. You're not actually really fighting, you're just holding down a button. That's part of also what I also meant, where this game just plays itself. Sometimes you literally just let the game auto battle for you. And you're just doing the most minimal input, and you can still win.
Smooth. It feels very clunky the way he pulls off that combo when you hold it.
Except for, you know, dodging and blocking. The defensive part you still have to do.
Right bumper. Now, generally, when you're swinging the blades around, you can have a good time, and they feel okay. They feel responsive enough, but it never really...
You see how many times, like, this dude leaps backwards and out of your combo? That happens so often with the Berserkers. That is, like, their thing, is they just ignore your combo and dodge out. They just, like, jump all the way out and jump all the way in.
In my opinion, as it did on the older games, and I think building upon...
The Berserkers in this game suck compared to the Valkyries, just saying.
That building, like, let's say, actual combos would have been really cool, so now there's a challenge to pull off this new combo. Not necessarily making it like a fighting game, but giving those more advanced players options to move in the direction of more advanced gameplay versus what feels to be kind of just a copy and paste of the last game. New players...
Sorry for English, not my native language. You could have fooled me. You're speaking really good English that makes sense and is well structured. You're more well structured than some other people that type in here, trust me. Just kidding. You actually do a good job though, Galax Fighter. Don't even worry about it. If you didn't even bring it up, I would not have noticed. The Berserkers dodge instead of actually going all berserk on you. Exactly! I was expecting the Berserkers to be in your face constantly, but they spend so much of their battles jumping out and away from you. They're just more like the Dodgers than the Berserkers. It's crazy. It is nice graphics in game. Oh, yeah, I mean, that's the one thing you absolutely cannot criticize. The raw visual fidelity of this game is great. The graphics look great. But that's like one of the few strong points you can really give this game. And that's not really enough. A game is more than just its graphics.
Though, we'll be happy to know that this game is really easy to pick up. It's not terribly difficult. If you click give me a story, they'll give you a story. The only downside that
Hell, it was really easy even on balanced mode, trust me. Because I went in balanced mode, did 0 side quests, upgraded almost nothing, still went through the entire game just mashing attack and spamming relics. It's not a very difficult game.
That I find is, like, early on in the game, they don't really give you a waypoint. So, like, in the opening scene where you're, like, at the house, I did spend a little bit of time running around, and I got a couple of locations wrong as to where I could go. But the game isn't so challenging or so vast that you can't figure out where you need to go if you get turned around.
For the main game, that's true. It's very much a hallway.
For people who wanted one. But again, for the exploration types, it gives you a little bit of that in the opening. Not so much towards the...
Shibuya need to continue my Final Fantasy recap binge. See you on the next stream, friend. Hey, thanks for hanging out. I'm really thinking about Stranger of Paradise being the next game that I stream. And so if people, because I don't believe it has crossplay, if people are on the same console as me, they can jump in and play with me. Priority goes to those who are members and patrons, though. But yeah, I'll throw that out there. But I think Stranger of Paradise will be the next co-op stream coming soon. It may not happen this month, though, because it's holidays, and we're getting close to Christmas in the States, so... That's too much of a burden right now. People are stressed out for holidays. So in the new year, we will probably do that. So please look forward to the next co-op stream. In the meanwhile, I don't know. I might just play Valkyrie Elysium in the meanwhile. We'll see. Something that's relatively new, and I'm going to need to do a recap on it anyway. So I might do Valkyrie Elysium.
The end of the game where things are a little bit more linear, but again, it's there. Now, you'll also be proud to know that despite people being really angry about Angrboda being a black girl, there are no politics in this game. So for people who are trying to bash the game and say it was just politics and all that stuff, it's really not. It's a fun game that I didn't run into anything like that. So that part, I can completely say when I've heard people saying that, it's just wrong because she did a great job, by the way. Angrboda, the person that played her, did fantastic. I couldn't tell you how immersive it was when that character was in the screen talking to Loki and doing all that stuff. That was a really immersive part of the story.
I don't know how immersive it was. It's true they don't really stress on that because it's not really, politically I'd agree with that. It's just a shame that her character's so useless. And it's funny because the game's like, you're fated to be useless. She's like, I can be my own person. And it ends up she's just useless.
And I think especially you'll appreciate it the more the story progresses, and then the more you see how things play out without giving too many spoilers on what her role is. So that I thought was really cool. Now I think we have to look at it realistically and say, like, how often are we going to play this game? that kind of determines if a game is worth anything in my book. And I think this is a good game.
Interesting that he places a really big focus on replayability. But hey, that's his criteria. That's his criteria.
It's honestly,
like I said, it's a different perspective, which is something I'm trying to gather here.
Frankly, probably the best game of 2022 so far. Now, that's not a compliment because we haven't had really good games this year.
That's unfortunately true. 2022 is a weak year.
Just haven't. But this is absolutely the game of the year this year. Despite what some people think about Elden Ring, this
is it Santa Monica Studio that makes the game? Yes, Santa Monica Studio is the one who made this game.
One takes the cake because it just...
They also made 2018. However, the person who wrote and directed the last game did not write and direct this game. In fact, the person who directed this game never directed any other video game before. This was his directorial debut.
Does a lot to engage you.
And boy, can you tell the difference.
Enough, even though the opening is slow, that once you get the story going and you get into the game, it is fun and you have a lot of time and you're on like almost like an interest trip. Like, hey, like I want to know what comes next. Like you're kind of like waiting for the next little bit as it comes, and it's a fun experience that almost anyone of any walk of life can pick up and enjoy. And I think for video games that's so important. Now, again, realistically, how often would you play it? That's where we have a little bit of a problem because they don't have chapters, so you can pick your favorite parts of the story to say, you know what, I like this chapter because all the action was in this scene. If they would have done that like we see in some Tomb Raider games or even some other games, I think that would be more ideal.
Yeah, if you want good dungeons, by the way, the Tomb Raider recent trilogy is fantastic. That is good dungeoneering. Very good. That only got better with each game.
They need to work on that with these storytelling type games.
I really hope Crystal Dynamics makes another Tomb Raider
outside
game.
of that, though, it was a really fun experience, and even though it was slow in the beginning and I had a terrible time, bored out of my mind, once it gave it a little bit more time, again, coming back to it, because I'll be honest, I had to pause and come back to it, but once it came back to it, I really did have a blast and it was a lot of fun. The puzzles are engaging, they challenge you enough, but not too much, which I can appreciate about puzzles not being too difficult, but just challenging enough. All in all, I would say this game is a solid 8 out of 10. It is a really good game, and I think a lot of people will like it. Again, there's
why are people saying he hated it? He liked it, and he thought it was a lot of fun.
It would have been a 9 if it would have had chapters and wouldn't have been a copy and paste combat-wise as the last game. So just to kind of go into why it got the rating it did. But again, be that as it may, this is just my take, but I'd love to hear from you in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Till the next video, I'll see you guys later.
Why do people hate this review? This was a well-described review. Why are people so negative on this? I'm gonna give this a thumbs up, even though it looks like it's overwhelmingly negative. Oh, I have to sign in for that. Never mind. No, like this, I thought this was pretty... Why are people shitting on this guy? That was a good review. He presented his points, supported it with the game, and presented a viewpoint that didn't sound like it was a shill. He criticized valid criticisms and praised what he liked personally while identifying it personally. Why do people shit on this guy? Negative because of the Actman drama? Oh yeah, that's right. I almost forgot about that because that ended up really going nowhere. Now, I will agree, for the Actman drama, sure, that was just a bunch of silly nonsense, but if he makes content like this regularly, I don't see why. I feel it's unwarranted. I don't watch his content, so I don't know what he makes. Apparently he's a TV calibrator, I guess, Quantum TV. But that game review's pretty good. That was a good game review. I'm not gonna lie. It sounds like people just hate bombing this guy. I don't know. That seems dumb. But no, I'm gonna have to say that that was actually a good review, Quantum TV. I'm not necessarily going to go out of my way to watch more of your game reviews, but I will say the one that I watched just now was pretty good. Alright, and also it was brief. It wasn't 30-something minutes or an hour. Jesus Christ. Oh, what was the other... God, what was the other one we were just looking at? Skill Up, that's right. So the thing I don't like about Skill Up, this is a sponsored review. I don't watch Skill Up because he does do a lot of sponsored reviews, and I don't see him stepping outside the safe takes zone. Skill Up has too many safe takes, in my opinion. But let's just skip around. Hopefully he has chapters.
Numbers move you.
Alexander, actually, Oni, it's a bad review because it doesn't 100% line up with my thoughts and gave the game only an 8 out of 10 instead of the perfect 10 because this game is a masterpiece of this generation. Oh yeah, you're right, Alexander, completely forgot. So many game reviewers have safe takes though. Yeah, because that's the most marketable thing. You see, if you're here to make a profit on your review, you are much better doing one of two things. Culling a very positive mainstream review, or being viewed as a hater and getting hate views, because hate views on this platform are still just as valid as, you know, fan views and like views. You actually are more likely to get more traffic and therefore more money if you go for hate views, but you can only hate things so much, you know? I'm sure there are channels that are just toxic about everything, but man, that just seems so exhausting, don't you think? But yeah, that was a good recommendation, Nova, for Quantum, but I thought you told me this guy was negative. He's not negative. He was actually generally positive.
But some...
And if he wasn't generally positive, he was fairly neutral. To me, he didn't really use that like inflammatory words or get nasty with any of his comments or criticism. I felt it was very fair.
Their range of premium wireless headsets. Ragnarok is a good excuse to spoil yourself. So
I like how in his sponsored review, he's doing another sponsorship. This dude's getting paid both ways. I respect the hustle. Skill up.
Give yourself the you purchase. Begin with. Well, that is a secondary objective. My primary objective is to protect your enjoyment of the game by avoiding almost anything that may be considered a spoiler.
That is an immediate red flag to me. How can you talk about a game that is 70% story and not talk about the story? I already got a problem with this review.
I say almost because anything is a spoiler in a certain context. The fact that Kratos is in this game is a spoiler.
That is not. Those are people that are unreasonable. The people who claim I don't want any spoilers whatsoever, they consider just knowing the title of a game a spoiler. No, stop being unreasonable. God, those type of people really piss me off. Just so irrational.
If you want to slice it that way, but practically speaking, any major
spoilers, God of War Ragnarok has a God of War and Ragnarok in it, just letting you know.
Reveal, epic boss battle, special event or location, anything that may reasonably be considered a spoiler, I am not including in this video. Put another way, if it was a surprise...
Which means we're gonna probably watch the introductory mission a million times. Great.
To me,
and trailer footage.
It will still be a surprise to you, even after having watched...
How's he gonna get 34 minutes out of watching just trailer
God
footage?
Of War Ragnarok. Now, you already know that God of War Ragnarok is a good video game. Even without having played it, you can feel it in...
That is bullshit about any video game. Without playing this game, you know it's a good game. That is bullshit. Who is this man talking to? This man's talking to idiots. The idiots who were like, without playing this game, I'm going to fight for it or hate it. You never played this game. You don't know the first thing about it. You didn't even watch a playthrough on YouTube, but you're prejudging it. The fact that he's on board with prejudgment, I'm immediately losing respect for Skill Up. Skill Up, I enjoy conceived notions. That is stupid, Skill Up. That is stupid.
In your jellies. What you want to know, and what everyone will be asking over the coming weeks, months, and years, is does this sequel somehow outdo its predecessor?
No.
I think that is a fundamentally flawed question when it comes to Ragnarok, because I don't think you should conceive of it as a sequel.
It is absolutely a sequel. Like, it literally takes place right after the first game. How is that not a sequel? Come on.
It is instead the second and final chapter in a two-part saga.
I'm sorry, it is a part 2, but that's also what sequels are?
Kill Bill Volume 2 was not the sequel to Kill Bill Volume 1, any more than Avengers Endgame was a sequel to Infinity.
Why are we talking about this? He's splitting hairs over a definition that doesn't matter so we can avoid a fundamental question that he introduced. This man's wasting more time than God of War Ragnarok.
War. The Lord of the Rings trilogy is one book that Tolkien published in 3 parts. You may feel like The Return of the King is a better part of the story than Fellowship was, or that Empire is better than Jedi, that doesn't really matter. Because those sagas were so powerful at various
God of War is not a saga, though. Like, the examples you're given... Whatever.
points and in their
This is a bad
conclusions
analogy.
that it's
Skip. This is a bad analogy.
you might have about that mythology without ever walking away and the technical talent who could make it so. How can you write a Greek murder god into the mythology of the Norse without it seeming ridiculous? How can you challenge and reframe almost every single preconceived notion you might have about that
This is
mythology
rambling.
without ever walking away from it or being untrue to it?
This is
How do you
rambling.
take those legendary 9 realms and breathe life into them, make them playable, make them explorable, make them stunning to behold, and fill them with secrets and stories? How do you deliver combat that deftly walks the line between overwhelming complexity and approachability, between functionality and spectacle? How the fuck do you get it to run at 120 FPS?
You don't, though. This game doesn't run at 120 FPS. This is the sponsored review part, because this game does not run at 120 FPS. It will when it comes out on PC, but this game does not run at 120 FPS.
And most importantly, how do you ground all of this in a tale of a father and son so scared of losing one another that they are
Actually, Empire Strikes Back is a part sequel to A New Hope. It's like, oh my god, this guy's really trying to... Whatever.
constantly pushing each other away, free falling into a prophecy they are
I
both
hate you,
desperate
Dad.
to
I'm gonna go
avert
smoke
and make
outside with
more
my cool
certain
friends.
Every spoken word and deed. God of War Ragnarok has better combat than the first game.
It's spoiler free because he doesn't talk about the actual game. Oh, you're right. That's a good point. He doesn't talk about the game.
More characters, more set piece moments, more everything. But I'll be honest and say that most of that doesn't really matter to me.
That's okay. It doesn't matter to the game either.
10 or 15 years from now, I won't remember the newly expanded skill perk customization system
It's not expanded. It's just different.
or the improvements to combat UI or the clever open
Oh, so that's what he's talking about, improvements to combat UI. That it has guiding circles to tell you when to block and to when to shield break. Sure. That is a UI improvement. I'll give you that.
world puzzles I encountered in Helheim. What I'll
That was not Helheim.
remember is that Ragnarok met the moment. It continued, expanded, and concluded this saga with such power that it not only stands on its own, but it achieves the impossible task of somehow making God of War 2018 better. That is the power of a good ending. It imbues the
I will agree with him. God of War 2018 looks a lot better compared to Ragnarok now. It was already good, but 2018 already looks better by comparison. I will agree with you on that.
succeeding journey with more significance, and it protects that story for all time, enshrining it as something worth revisiting and worth sharing with others.
This is not a replayable story.
That is Ragnarok's biggest...
Sindri is the only character Sindri's the only developed character in Ragnarok. He's the only one that goes through a character arc in development. Everyone else is a silly trope for daytime drama TV.
accomplishment, not its frame rate or its boss battles or its loot. It's the fact that it concludes this saga so masterfully.
It's not a saga, it's a
Immediately
two-parter.
wanna
You
go
just said
right back
this.
to the start of it to experience it all again.
I'm checking the time because
I'm
I'm like,
look at technical stuff first because the rest of Ragnarok is so strong that I expect its technical excellence will be overlooked and taken for granted. It begins with its suite of options and accessibility features.
Oh my
Consistent
God.
with the standard that Sony continues to set in this space, the menu offers a level of customization.
he's reviewing the
I'm very on the
accessibility
record for
menu.
Not liking motion blur
Guy.
or a dynamic resolution supporting up to during my playthrough. It was so good to play a game that ran so well and flawlessly.
My guy,
How much of a
shut
visual-
up. Oh. Right off chat, sorry. Nobody calls a two-parter a saga, by the way. That's not what you call a two-parter. I don't care. Why does YouTube care why I skip their ads? That's so weird.
It's not much of a leap. Ragnarok does look unmistakably better.
Yes, the graphics are good. Nobody's arguing that.
sequences, which they can be used for, but apparently they are rarely used for that purpose. As confirmed by a developer from Insomniac who worked on Spider-Man and another one who was the director of The Last of Us, apparently this technique is more about boxing the player into spaces, Bayonetta and Devil May Cry have their magic walls that appear and vanish, God of War has arrow crevices. No matter the justification, it's frustrating to be honest, given that you are constantly edging yourself through crevice after crevice.
I agree with him though. I point that out too, that there are many loading sequences for some reason.
If it's part of the level design language that exists to serve the combat side of the gameplay, then I think some new language is required in future. By the way, on the topic of load times, when you do encounter them, typically after a death, they are very quick. Here is an example.
No load times, guys, remember.
Not too shabby at all. Outside of that, God of War makes use of the DualSense controller, but it's a fairly lightweight implementation.
I'll tell you right now, I think I broke my controller because I disabled the adaptive triggers, and now my R1 bumper feels constantly stiff, like it's trying to resist with the adaptive trigger portion, like it's stuck in there. It doesn't happen for any of the triggers, just my R1, which is annoying because R1 is how you use light attacks in this game. So I feel like I'm just grinding extra hard against it. I think adaptive triggers are such a dumb gimmick. I also don't like it where it's like your health bar are LEDs on your controller. I'm not looking down at my controller to see my low health. I'm looking at the game that is currently giving me low health. Come on. Who uses that? Such a gimmick. I turn it off because it also drains the battery more. It's not like the DualSense needs any help in draining its battery.
The adaptive triggers are only rarely used. Only during pre-scripted sequences where Kratos has to hack through something with his axe. It would have been interesting to see some part of the combat sandbox make use of them, but given that this is also a PS4 game, I can understand why that didn't happen. The biggest benefit the DualSense brings is haptic feedback, which continues to be such an awesome upgrade over the standard rumble from...
It is the standard rumble, don't even at me with that.
Previous gen. Long sessions where I'd have to burn through 2 fully charged controllers inside of menu as well as the option.
This guy is still talking about the tech features of this game. Why do people like this reviewer?
Frank, I don't quite remember anything specific about the original game's audio, but I will tell you that the audio here is excellent, both in terms of the overall soundscape employed and the...
Okay, there's a difference between excellent and just normal. When I'm rowing in water sounds like water, that doesn't blow me away. This is a shill review. He's just talking about the most neutral, boring things.
Whether it is the options menu.
I don't care about the options menu.
Narrowly high bar, and Ragnarok is yet another example of this. It's a technical tour de force that for many other titles would be its centerpiece.
Is this man going to talk about the game at all? We're 13 minutes in, he hasn't talked about the game yet.
War Ragnarok begins some 3 years after the events of the first game. Kratos, born a Spartan and forced to carve a path through the Greek pantheon, has found his way to the realms of Thor and Odin and Freya and the world serpent, Jormungandr. In this new world, Kratos takes a wife and has a son, Atreus, but Kratos' upbringing was cruel and the life he was forced to lead hard. He doesn't know how to show love to his son because he was never shown any himself.
That is bullshit. I hate it when people bring that up. People act like Kratos only got like human emotions in God of War 2018. You have never played the original God of War trilogy. Kratos was constantly humanized in the original God of War trilogy. I'm so tired of people saying that you are just showing you have never played the original God of War trilogy. Like, tell me you never played God of War without telling me you haven't played God of War. Kratos was constantly, like, that's what made it such an effective Greek tragedy, was the incredibly tumultuous emotions Kratos had, and the tragic situations he was thrown into, and the social dynamics he had with other people. Sometimes he was cruel and callous, sometimes unfair things were against him, sometimes he would retaliate and rage, sometimes he would weep in sorrow and grieve over others. He would see, like, horrible things happen to other people and feel bad. He would inflict horror on other people. He would be reluctant to fight people. He had a range of emotions. And people act like he only started emoting in this game. It's because you never played the other games and you don't know how he is. Golly. Pisses me off when I see that. Skillup has clearly never played any other God of War.
And when Kratos' wife dies, she sends her husband and her son on a pilgrimage that seems in no small part intended to bring them together.
I mean, just look at the scene when he's realizing that he is the cause of the death for his wife and daughter. aka putting the ashes on his own body, or the reason why he wears the scar on his face for his brother, who he also had a very tragic ends with. Like, that's part of his visual identity. You don't even know this.
Pilgrimage did just that, but it also put Kratos and Atreus on a collision course with the gods of these realms.
This guy's now recapping 2018 in his Ragnarok review to waste time. Skip. I already played 2018.
Always culminates in their destruction.
I like how he's quoting
I would
actual
say
mythology
right
like
now
that actually is.
If you are not brushed up on this stuff, go and watch some YouTube videos, go read some Wikipedia entries.
Don't read the Wikipedia entries, instead watch my wonderful recapitation review that is very concise but also thorough. That will absolutely catch you up on God of War Ragnarok.
Go read a book if you've got the time. I really recommend Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology, a fantastic retelling of these stories and characters, pulled from the
retelling, mind you.
Historical records of the mythology, but generously say that
is he being sponsored for that too?
You should know the story of Ragnarok so you can track.
Hold on, let me check if he's actually sponsoring that book too. Let me see something real fast. Damn, man, YouTube algorithm much on this? Holy shit. Why is this in your descriptor, man? Maybe I should do that. Just put all of my recapitation playlists in my description. I mean, this guy is clearly, like, you know, super popular for it. Maybe I should try that. God of War Ragnarok launches November 9th, exclusive to the PlayStation, 4 out of 5. Wow, you rated the PlayStation a 4 out of 5? Harsh but fair.
It to some inevitable conclusion and point out Easter eggs along the way, like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I say it because God of War Ragnarok is a dance with that prophecy. In one moment, Ragnarok seems inevitable, and nothing anyone does matters because everything, even the struggle against it, has already been written. In the next moment, the will of Kratos and Atreus to defy their fate seems to pay dividends, and perhaps they aren't struggling for naught. But you can only see so many of these successes and setbacks if you know who these people are and what these locations, relics, and events mean. Without that grounding, so much...
You do not need to know Norse mythology to play Ragnarok. I'm going to tell you that right now, chat. In fact, it's probably best that you don't know Norse mythology so you're not upset at how God of War Ragnarok interprets them. And that's coming from somebody who does not know Norse mythology. I openly admit that.
Much of Ragnarok's death dance with destiny is lost on you.
It is not. This is not a deep story, man.
That's why I think it is so important to read up before you saddle up for this experience.
You do not need to study and do homework for this game, guys, to play it. Trust me. Oh, hell yeah. Let's play some nacho fries. Low-key, I actually do like Taco Bell nacho fries. I think it tastes pretty good. I like the seasoning that they make. I want to copy it for myself.
Many, the way that Santa Monica's writers use this prophecy as a launching pad for their own story was their greatest accomplishment. I think the power of God of War 2018 was its emotional core, that connection between father and son, both of them terrified of each other for different reasons. Seeing them break through that fear and come together was more powerful than any other part of that story. Here in Ragnarok,
it was a powerful part, but not the most powerful.
Plot. It is so clever. It's like a murder mystery where you think you know so many things along the way because you've seen it 1,000 times, but you don't know shit. It reminds me of that quote, who are you going to trust, me or your lying eyes? Your knowledge of this prophecy is both necessary but also your greatest enemy, as Santa Monica leads you by the nose so expertly that you could swear you can hear the writer's room cackling as you sit mouth agape at it.
By the way, shout out again to that guy who, from the very first trailer, figured out that Odin was Tyr. Just from looking at the trailer, he's like, oh, actually this, and the other, and due to this knowledge, like, Odin's Tyr. And he was right a year ago. Biggest W, that guy. And even somebody like me who doesn't know Norse mythology, but just, you know, does trust my own lying eyes, I completely knew that Tyr was super sus, and even though my direct theory, which was I thought Tyr was mind controlled by Odin, was wrong, I was very much on the right track. If I did know mythology, though, I probably would have figured it out, because I didn't know through just the game that Odin was was known for shapeshifting into other people. I didn't know he did that.
Each big reveal. You were in for such a ride with this. I'm so jealous of you for getting to experience it for the first time. As for Kratos and Atreus,
You experienced this for the first time, though.
their relationship has moved into a new phase here. Kratos has learned how to show love to his son, but Atreus has become
Whoa, don't take that out of context.
a teenager, and teenagers are dicks. Rebellious, foolhardy, overconfident, easily distracted.
The problem is we did this arc in the last game and we did it better. With him being a bratty kid. We've already did this.
Duplicitous. Atreus longs to know who he really is and what significance he holds in a
Yes. Talk about the
always
review,
didn't
though.
exist separate from their relation to Kratos and Atreus, but here they are so much more fleshed out, and they become an ensemble cast rather than a supporting cast. Some of the
They are still a supporting cast. I don't think you know what that word means.
most impactful moments in this entire experience have nothing to do with Kratos or Atreus.
Which is sad.
That is how significant these characters have become in this
They are
story,
not significant.
and it is all the richer for it. Just as I delight in how much Ragnarok fucks with our preconceived notions of this ancient prophecy, so too does it totally upend our conception of who these gods are. There are gods not yet revealed, so I won't do that here, but we do know of Thor, voiced by Ryan Hurst, and Odin, voiced by Richard Schiff. Now, I know it's cringe to admit it in the modern era, but The West Wing is literally my favorite show ever, and Toby Ziegler was literally my favorite
Oh, they did literally just model him. Holy crap, man.
character ever, and to hear him voice the All-Father in this way, it was a little bit special. Both Odin and Thor,
special is
the way
one
they've
way
been
of putting
realized here is absolutely not what you'd expect. Not needlessly throwing away
This guy, he speaks in vague terms. He talks around things. Is this what people like in reviews? Is this what's popular? It's clearly popular. How do people like this? I feel like people want somebody to talk about Ragnarok without actually talking about Ragnarok.
traditional.
This is such a dumb review.
I expect that different people will take different things from it, but I'm all but certain that it's the story that will stay with you the most. It's different in its goals. Than
This guy's just
2018 was.
rambling.
2018 was this gut
He
punch
speaks in marketing
where a
terms. He
sledgehammer
does.
swung
He talks
straight
in
at your
marketing
fears.
terms.
I didn't feel the need to play 2018.
I feel like he's just
again.
reading the press
Felt
kit that
like
Sony
gut
gave him.
punch better prepared for its twists and turns.
That was one thing, by the way, Lynn, when you bring up that Tyr had his hand bitten off. I didn't know Norse mythology, but that was one thing that one dude who said that guy's not Tyr, who called it. Because that I learned watching his video after we had the reveal, and I'm like, I wonder if anybody else figured this out. And I watched his video, and he totally figured it out. And yeah, when Tyr lost his arm / his hand, depending on who you talk to, either way, he was debilitated that way. And that's another giveaway that wasn't Tyr. Because Tyr lost an arm / hand from Fenrir. Like, that happened.
Is the most noticeable gameplay improvement between this game and the first. If you're at all unfamiliar with God of War, it has a hybridized structure that combines linear sequences with semi-open world exploration. When Kratos and Atreus resolve to do something, that will often take them to a specific place that is only accessible while they're working towards that specific goal. Temples, sections of jungle, entire realms that exist as curated spaces tailor-made for combat arenas and
Curated spaces for combat arenas. That is a wonderful way of describing highly polished hallways and giant circle arenas for battles.
boss encounters and set-piece moments. By the way, fantastic. So many sequences in this game are incredible, and not just because they're violent or big or loud. It's about their choreography. The storyboarding of these sequences.
Choreography.
Oh man, I wish I could show you some of this stuff, but I can't. You'll just
I really wish I could show you some of this stuff. I'm going to tell you about these amazing things that I cannot show you. Compelling. Amazing.
have to trust me when I say that. if
Just
it's
trust me,
spectacle
guys.
Or action or just fun that you are after, then Ragnarok will not disappoint you in the slightest. So, outside of these more scripted sequences and these linear
Bold of
levels,
him to assume
the
that.
realms you'll visit will often open up into these semi-open world spaces. I keep saying semi.
So you know sometimes in third-person shooters, when you walk and you enter a room and you notice all these chest-high walls and you know there's going to be a fight that spawns there? God of War does that. Where like you walk in and you see a big wide-open circle arena, it's like there's going to be enemies that spawn here, and that's exactly what happens. It's like, it's a video game, I get it, but sometimes it's a little too obvious that it's a video game. It breaks you the immersion.
Semi-open world because they're not truly open world. There are 9 realms in the...
They never claimed it was open world, by the way. In Santa Monica's defense, they never claimed it was open world.
Norse mythology.
They always did set expectations. Like, for some reason, like, a lot of gamers out there want to call this open world. It's not open world.
I won't tell you how many you'll be visiting here, but they are distinct realms. You'll travel to them via the branches of the world tree, and when you're there, you won't find them contiguous spaces like, say, Horizon Forbidden West. You'll find them more hub-based, each realm containing...
That's a thing that I don't like, that he just did. He makes a point of reference to a very niche game that you probably haven't played. Most people haven't played Horizon Zero West, so why did you use that as an example to a big open connected space? You should use a very broad thing that a lot of people are familiar with. Horizon's not a very popular game.
A number of distinct biomes connected by some sort of thoroughfare. This will be familiar to you if you played the first game, because that's how Midgard was built, with the Lake of the Nine serving as this central hub connecting various areas that contained puzzles, combat challenges, boss encounters, and more. So imagine Midgard, but then imagine it bigger, and then imagine more stuff on it, and then imagine multiple of those open world spaces.
That is not true. Midgard was not bigger than its 2018 version.
Again, I won't say how many, but I will say that it is not an insignificant...
Oh, damn, you're not going to say how many, so you don't want to bring up the fact that only 4 of the 9 realms have a large open space? Damn, I guess that would be a spoiler, wouldn't it?
...number, and none of these spaces are slouches. They are all full of stuff to see and do, full of spaces worth...
They are certainly full of stuff.
...exploring, and full of stories worth finding. That's one of the interesting things about these spaces. They each have their own meta-narrative that exists separate from the main storyline in that realm. There are lots of side quests you'll discover, many of which will dovetail into a broader story about some threat in that region, or trying to uncover the events from a time long past. It definitely helps to read the lore entries you discover along the way, as they provide so much flavor, but even without reading those...
Oh damn, are you telling me my side quests for world building provide lore for world building? Damn, that's unexpected, man. That's amazing.
You will feel like there's a reason behind the stuff you're doing. What is that stuff? It's open world.
This guy talks a lot and says nothing. I am actively falling asleep right now, and I'm amazed.
Best encounters. Some of the most interesting and moving moments can be found in this side content. So while you can take a lot of this stuff and drop it into familiar buckets...
My guy, please.
So that's a guess. But I spent around 37 because I did almost every bit of side content I could before being forced back onto the main path. And I would estimate that completing every bit of side content for a platinum trophy or whatever is going to run you at least 45 to 50 hours.
That is actually true. My platinum clocked in at 46.5 hours, so that is true. And my initial playthrough was 26 hours through not doing side quests, but absolutely, I would probably dock an hour for the times I got stuck, lost, or was just retrying a stupid extra challenge that didn't even matter.
Critical to my enjoyment was the fact that exploration is a real feature of these spaces. This is not a map marker driven game, as very little of what you're working towards is marked on your map.
That is complete bullshit, because once you find something, it is absolutely marked on your map. If we're talking about the little pointless collectibles, sure, but they're still just pointless collectibles. They're right there in your path. You can't help miss. Like the Nornir chest you're currently showing, it's right there in your face. You don't really have to find Nornir chests. They're right there in your face. You have to find what solves them, but whatever. Like, you say exploring, but you're just running down hallways, man. You're just going down lanes. Just keep your eye out for the brightly colored things.
You really do have to just press forward to see what you find. You'll often see an objective in the distance, but won't quite know how to get there. Stuff in the environment doesn't do that flashy highlight thing.
If only this game allowed me to jump, I could jump over this fence, swim over to that other area and pull myself up like a proper open world game. But this game doesn't want to be an open world game, so nope, boots on the ground, baby.
You actually need to...
If only I could use my Blades of Chaos to, hookshot over there. Nope. No freedom and exploration.
Look at these environments. Look at the detail within them and engage.
Look at the detail of this dwarven village that you can't go inside anywhere, that has no NPCs to talk to, no sense of being lived in, and the story hand waves away why you can't do or see anything except visual vistas from a distance. Look at it. Look at it!
Engage them. You don't just glide across space with your eyes fixed on a distant map mark.
This mobile game gets a lot of advertising bucks. I bet it's a pay-to-win game.
You contend with these environments, and that contention becomes more interesting and more satisfying as these realms slowly open up to you. Having said all of that, a lot of this open world stuff is linked to a very classically inspired
I thought you said this game was an open world.
resource hunt. There are a lot of chests filled with a lot of hack silver hidden throughout these lands. You collect crafting materials to upgrade your gear. You collect relics, which are sold
Yeah,
to
I've said this part
blacksmith
too,
for
where
more hack silver that
all
you
your rewards and all of your fights, sometimes they're gear sets, but more often than not, they're just crafting materials, which isn't fundamentally interesting.
and end up needing because it flows so readily. I'm not sure that this is fair criticism,
And I was
because this is ultimately
It is criticism, because if you're going to expand on loot, the loot needs to be good. And the loot in this game is not particularly interesting. It's just crafting. I stuck with one set the entire game. And I dabbled in another set that ended up just being useless, but I can tell you from personal experience, you can watch my playthrough, I went with the Vidar set that you get pretty much as your very first set that he's wearing right now. The Vidar set, all it does is it makes your auto combos do more damage. And because most of what you do is either manual or auto combos, your basic spamming of light attack, which I did for the entirety of this game, do a lot of damage. And that carried me through the entire game. I alternated my arm and waist to try to dabble with like doing the finisher, but then I found out this game does a very stupid thing. So one of them was like, oh, you get a burst of strength when you do a finisher. You would think that once you did the finisher, then you get the burst of strength so you can do more damage to get into another finisher. No. This game starts the bonus when you start the finisher animation, and because some finisher animations take so long, your bonus disappears by the time you exit the animation, so the set bonus is useless. Who thought that was a good idea? So I dumped that and just stuck with the Vidar set. And then later when I was doing cleanup, the Berserker chest piece that you get from one of the Berserker guys is really, really good because it boosts your damage when you do relic attacks. And since you do nothing but spam relic attacks and light attacks, it's just a great damage booster. I don't know. I didn't bother with any of the gear in this game except for the first set I started with.
a fantasy adventure RPG, so chests filled with stuff fits, I guess, but it's so many chests, and so often the stuff they contain isn't truly valuable to you. I was chasing this stuff because I really loved exploring these spaces and fighting as I did.
If you do like collecting in this game, you will like this game because there's a lot of useless knickknacks to collect. I will say that.
A little played out.
This is so
To say that
boring.
for me personally, God of War's melee combat is probably my favorite melee combat in any video game.
That means this man has never played good melee video games. If that's your standard for the best, oh brother, I'm so pleased because that means there are plenty of melee action video games that are better. Even Donkey recognized that God of War is in stiff competition with a lot of games that recently came out this year and last year. I don't get how somebody who reviews almost every single game like Skill Up doesn't get that. Wait, hold on. Let me see something real fast. You're telling me it's okay? Gotham Knights, sure. Plague Tale, maybe. Score, no. Bayonetta. You said this is the best action game over Bayonetta 3. You are full of shit. Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. I don't even know what that is. Saints Row. Oh, the new one. That was stupid. Why would you review a game that already came out as the same exact game? Oh, this guy does like talking about specs. Even Spider-Man, which is a very simple but very combo and tech-heavy combat system, is better than God of War right now. Ghostwire Tokyo is better. I would bet even Lego Star Wars is actually better. Destiny 2, definitely better. Tiny Tina's, I don't know, but if it's like the other Borderlands, probably better. Elden Ring? Are you effing joking me? You consider this better than Elden Ring Combat. You are mad. Sifu even. Monster Hunter? Come on, man. Really? Even Guardians of the Galaxy was, I think, pretty decent. It was simple, but it was decent. Like, this man has played plenty of other third-person action games, and he considers this the best. That is That is madcap, as they say.
I'm not saying it's the best.
You just said it was the best, didn't you? Or did I mishear you?
I would say that for me personally, God of War's melee combat is probably my favorite.
Oh, he said it's his favorite, not the best. Okay, that's different. My bad. I retract what I said. I misheard.
But in any video game, I'm not saying it's the best. I'm just saying it's my favorite.
I never liked that, by the way, the moment when people argue from extremes, where this game's good, it's not the best. That's such a like, when people say things are not the best or not the worst to justify their position in something, that is a non-argument. That is a logical fallacy. That's called arguing from the extremes. That is such an irrelevant example. Nobody expects something to be the absolute objective best. That doesn't mean it still doesn't have points of criticism or strengths that we can't examine and compare. You're just trying to sidestep the issue to avoid scrutiny.
I enjoy the slower Souls-like combat, particularly for its breadth across different weapon categories and its enemy boss.
You think this is slow compared to God of War? Yeah, no.
Design. I enjoy the fast-paced combat of character action games.
Okay, he's actually talking about good
for
character
the
games.
depth
That's good.
of their combat systems and how much there is to master and how rewarding that mastery can look and feel if you invest the time. God of War's combat is that sweet spot between the two, though.
It is not the sweet spot between the two. How dare you paint this game between Bayonetta and Elden Ring? How dare you?
Its pacing is very even, giving you time between each swing to consider your next swing. Its parry windows are generous, inviting you to parry rather than turtling behind a shield.
I will say this though, the parry windows are generous, which is why I went with the parry shield the entire game, and I don't know, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Air juggle hang time is very long, giving you an absurd amount of time to take advantage of an airborne
That's true.
enemy with a follow-up combo. The combos you are capable of pulling off strike that balance where they're easy enough to pull off without feeling mindless. And
it's almost like the game auto combos for you, because it does.
Truly understanding the capabilities of each weapon opens up your combo potential substantially. And the framing of all this action with its camera pans and its dynamic slowdowns makes combat look truly awesome. Almost like pre-scripted cutscenes at times, ones that you remain fully in control of. God of War lacks the depth and breadth of other melee combat.
I like how he's the third person who really likes this game but also admits the combat is overly simplistic.
Games.
Because it is.
It is the pinnacle of approachability, allowing you to feel like a...
There we go. That's the better word for it. We keep using accessibility when we talk about having a very gentle learning curve and onboarding. Approachability. That's the word. That's the word we should be using more than accessibility. Accessibility, we need to stay for the people who need to use accessibility features. Like, I'm missing, like, one hand. I lost it to a wolf. I still want to play God of War. Do we have an option here? And they're like, yes, we do. That's an accessibility option. Approachability. I feel people are conflating the two. They're conflating approachability and accessibility. When they're saying accessibility, but they mean approachability. Some people just straight up I want this game to be easy and play itself because I actually want to watch a movie. Sure.
A total fucking badass on your first playthrough. You don't need to study this game to be good at it. You don't need to train in practice areas to learn combos. There's just enough here that you can wrap your arms around all of it without too much effort. And while that means you'll hit that skill cap ceiling pretty quickly...
Skill cap? Sure.
It also means that it's not going to take very long to start having fun with all the tools at your disposal. That's a blessing and a curse at the best of times, but I think it's a little more of a curse here in Ragnarok, because the combat system has not advanced a great deal versus the previous game.
That is true. That was another one of the comments.
You're going to hit it even faster here. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're doing a lot of side content, then that skill ceiling is lower than ever, as enemies simply can't keep pace with your progression, at least.
See, I was always wondering about that too. Because, again, I played doing 0 side content, and it really wasn't until, like, the very end, like, against the double Valkyrie fight, that I was actually struggling in a fight, where I felt like I really needed to be focused to get it. And that was the very, very end of the game. Like, the penultimate fight. But the rest of the game, it wasn't really a problem. And so I can only imagine, if you have done side quests, even at a moderate degree, how incredibly overpowered you probably were for this game.
Based on normal difficulty. Now, to be clear, there are some new elements to the combat sandbox. Many of the combos and abilities from the last game return here, but there are plenty of new ones added as well.
They actually don't. There are not many. There's like a couple. They got rid of almost all of them, which kind of broke my heart.
Well, Having said that, none of them really change the flow of combat or meaningfully enlarge your capabilities. They're more variations on the way you deal damage rather than new ways to deal damage. The biggest addition to the combat
Yeah, I mean, I agree with this part. This part he's actually talking about. This part I agree with him. This part he's making, like, this to me is part of the review, not the first 20 minutes he just rambled about shit. That is true that combat is not improved per se, they just do the same things differently. And that's exactly what I was saying, where it's less on combat techniques and more on elemental damage and charge boosting.
Perk system will have its actual impact can scarcely be, and Santa Monica do a good job of combining them to create pressure on you to mix up your playstyle. Some of that relates to the new verticality present in combat spaces.
Yeah.
Diversity is a big one. There are a number of repeated bosses here, but there are a much larger total number of those bosses. You won't have to fight 8 trolls or whatever.
But you do fight 8 alligators.
Similarly, the combat HUD has been improved with clearer indications for incoming attacks, plus Mimir will often yell out to warn you when shit's about to go down.
Careful, brother, you're covered in Bifrost. I always felt his alarms were real late, though.
Similar this combat is and feel disappointed by that. I get it. I think that's totally fair. For me personally, though, I just love what this combat already was, and I didn't need it to change all that much. I think it's well and truly strong enough to survive a second outing, and while I would have appreciated some bold changes,
I don't see. It's true that it is similar, and that's not a problem at this game. The problem is that they didn't. It's not that they didn't improve the combat in the last one. They didn't make up for the shortcomings of it. You know, that's the issue that I personally have. Is the base combat system is fine if you want to roll with it, but you should have tried doing something to improve the reasons why people don't typically do third-person over-the-shoulder combat.
I'm still very happy with what's here, and I'm always excited.
Even though the camera pans out to be more centralized as you do
minor
here.
Trash mob or some epic boss battle.
It's the Kratos theme that they use to death.
I know that's been a theme that I've
But
come
no,
back to
tell
a
me
few
more
times
how
in
this game has
review,
it
the
won
idea
soundtrack of the
comparison,
year. I
iteration,
cannot believe this game won
evolution.
soundtrack of the
I
year.
know
That is
that's
such a
going to be a big
crock.
part of the way this game is talked about before launch, as everyone will be reading the tea leaves scattered throughout these reviews and guessing this way or that about whether or not the game will immediately fall silent when people get their hands on this for themselves. Maybe it hinges on the myth of these gods.
Wrap it up, please.
But were just as compelling and powerful and memorable. Sony Santa Monica succeeded so comprehensively here that I am just in awe of the talent that it took to produce it, and so thankful that I got the chance to play it. You are going to absolutely love it. I strongly recommend God of War Ragnarok.
So Skillup just does the thumbs up,
Alright,
thumbs
so
down
Steel Series,
system.
as you know, I've
He finishes the finale of his review. We have... Whoa, this guy spends 4 minutes... Yeah, 4 minutes shilling for Steel Series in this already sponsored video game review. Amazing. Hey, he's getting that bag, man. I can only be jealous. I wish people paid me that much to spit out talking points and ramble for 20 minutes. Like, he spent most of his review in the actual part here about, like, combat. But he rambled about bullshit in his first 20 minutes, talked about combat for 10 minutes, and shilled for Steel Series for 5 minutes. What a stupid review. This makes me... But are you hearing the parallels, though, between what they've said in terms of what's good and what's not good? If you listen closely, you hear that many of them repeat the same talking points, but also repeat that they say the same weak points as well, which so far seem to be more in line. I hate to say it, but Quantum TV seem to have been like the most concise review. That probably was just straight up good. A lot of these people are very rambly. I'm one to talk, right? But hey, it takes one to know one. Do we have any more? I'm not going to watch the 1 hour I Hate God of War by Under the Mayo. I'm not going to watch that. I'm not a big fan of hate boner sessions because sometimes they can be a little too emotional and crazy. Do we have any other videos that we want to try or any other reviewers we want to try before we wrap this up? IGN. You know what? For reference, let's look at the IGN review. You know, we always clown on IGN. Rightfully so in many cases. Oh, that's right. Reunion comes out this week, doesn't it? Or next week, I think. "15 minutes? Okay, we'll watch this. Never seen Asgard like this before." You're right. I didn't think Asgard would just be a giant rock climbing section and then a walk through a town I can't even do anything in. You're right. I never seen Asgard like that. People shit on IGN, but it's still got almost 3 million views. Clearly people still watch this, you know?
At Navy Federal Credit Union,
I don't think I'll stream Reunion because I don't think they actually changed anything, but again, I could be wrong. Maybe I should do what SkillUp does and not listen to, only listen to reviews and make prejudgments. I can't believe that guy endorses that. What a joke. Play Valorant, guys.
About time.
Hold on. Was the review copy not provided by PlayStation? Really? Unless they say in the video.
About time.
You think you can come here, become a daddy, get a clean slate? That ain't how it works. You're a destroyer, like me.
How do you follow up on one of the greatest video games of all time? Sony Santa Monica finds itself in a situation not dissimilar to when Francis Ford Coppola created the sequel to his mob movie masterpiece, The Godfather. Like part 2 of the Corleone
Weird
story,
review, but a better
War
example.
Ragnarok
Or weird example, but it's a better example than the one SkillUp gave.
puts a fierce, younger member of the family directly under the microscope. In doing so, it manages to reach the heights of its predecessor, and in some ways, even tower above it. The writing, performances, and music are each exceptional, bringing this
Exceptional, he says.
expansive Norse tapestry to life. But even as it holds your heart in one hand with its elegantly told story, it's crunching bone.
Oh, I completely forgot about the little bear scene. When I ran across that bear, I was like, I wonder how this bear died. I completely forgot about that scene. It's such a throwaway scene.
In the other with fantastically ferocious combat. It all binds together to forge a monumental action epic that adds yet another impressive landmark to the video game landscape.
That Thor intro was so forgettable.
You've already taught me discipline. I need more than that. I need answers. Answers you don't have.
Answers only your mother had.
Keeping things broad and spoiler-free, Kratos' story picks up a few years.
Another one where they don't want to talk about the story, but it's supposed to be a review about a story-based game. Pathetic.
After the final revelations of 2018's God of War, the apocalyptic Ragnarok is coming, and its events circle around his son Atreus like one of Odin's ravens. Ragnarok wastes no time in stepping into the action, and after a breakneck opening battle, the first step of this new journey is to leave the frozen realm of Midgard behind and find a missing Norse god in the broader and varied universe. It may not be as tightly a told story as 2018's, but Ragnarok has much grander designs. This
Even IGN admits the
sprawling
pacing
epic
is bad.
that always keeps things on the move without ever becoming disorienting.
They just quickly washed
gluing
over
me
it.
to the edge of my seat as it repeatedly toyed with expectations. It's an ambition regularly met by stunning execution, with a momentum that never slips as you hurtle towards its bombastic ending. This journey took me just over 28 hours with a fair few side bombastic ending. This journey took me just over 28 hours with a fair few side quests completed
Okay, that's fair. That's about what I did too. That's fair.
along the way, but with plenty still left to do afterwards. Prophecy and sacrifice swirl at the story's center, as it repeatedly prods at the concept of destiny and whether blood runs thicker than the ink that pens it. It doesn't merely offer up surface level readings of these themes.
Yes, it does.
Instead, each character and their motives are given the respect they deserve by delving in deep. It's a truly special and fittingly grand conclusion of Kratos' Norse saga.
Saga? He's only had one other game, man. It's not a saga. What is up with these people?
Despite being laden with myth and melodrama, there's still plenty
Melodrama
of time for
is the right
pockets of
word for a
self-aware
lot of it.
silliness that almost always elicit a laugh. Whether that be another bizarre dwarven contraption, or the simple thrill of Kratos eating a sausage. When not eating dinner, Kratos' thunderous voice actor Christopher Judge frequently engages in smartly realised dialogue with his equally impressive castmates. Make no mistake though, this is firmly Judge's court, and one he frequently dominates. Kratos' traumatic personal history is reflected in everything from his mournful tone of voice to his appearance.
Atreus! Listen to me.
His Icarus wings are long since clipped, but his complexion is still pale, like a square of wall where a family portrait used to hang. The everlasting cycle of violence between parents and their children has long been a theme ever since the original God of War trilogy, although one that was only truly emphasised in 2018's revival. Now it's an inescapable fixture of Ragnarok, an exploration of the rawest and most human of emotions, and what happens when they are channeled through superhuman vessels. Pain leads to anger leads to hate. This is the genesis of the stalking threat
Did he really just quote Star Wars prequels?
embodied by the incomparable force that is a grieving mother. Portrayed incredibly with a newfound fury by Danielle Bisutti, Freya is a striking presence to be reckoned with in the sequel. No longer just a helpful witch in the woods, she's given a whole new spectrum of emotional depth to play in, and Ragnarok is all the better for it. Each character is given their own moments to shine throughout. Sunny Suljic fires back regularly with the sharp teenage tongue of a brasher, more confident Atreus, and Alistair Duncan's severed head accessory Mimir continues to provide levity and exposition in abundance.
That's one thing, there's a lot of comic relief in this game. Again, I kind of feel like they wrote this like a Marvel movie, a Marvel MCU movie, where we have to have funny quips and like pop culture references and a lot of comedy relief. I realize that now the more that I think about this. JL West, you know what's funny? That the mural you saw in 2018 already showed the ending of the person to trace holding clear as Patrick was like, was it really Odin he was holding? I thought it showed Kratos. Did I really miss that? Damn, I misspoke then.
Fun and profit. Lovely.
Various newcomers to the vastly expanded cast also deliver fantastic performances, with a particular standout being Leia Hayes, radiating infectious energy from the mysterious Angerboda.
The infectiously useless Angerboda that only appears in one scene, and like cameos 3 other times in the game.
The foul-mouthed Brock and skittish Sindri provide pockets of humour, as well as a lot of genuinely helpful info along the way, as they play a much more central role in the story this time around. Also returning is composer Bear McCreary, whose score, like the Dwarven Smith brothers, goes hammer and tongs from the first moment to the last. There's some truly beautiful music to be heard along.
The music in this review is going hard for some reason. This isn't even music from the game. This is like royalty-free epic music.
The journey, as well as explosions of raw orchestral power during intense fight scenes. Layered writing, impeccable acting, and stunning set design are all crucial aspects in driving God of War's filmic aspirations home.
Yeah, it definitely... That's the polite way. Filmic aspirations. This game, again... We keep seeing it, and other people saying it, this game tried to be a movie more than a video game, and was marketed to people who want to lightly engage with a movie over playing a video game. This went way too hard into the cinematic aspect, that it makes me wonder why it was classified as an action-adventure game.
But they're also never let down by the rock-solid technical craftsmanship at work.
The technical locked at 30 FPS craftsmanship, amazing.
One continuous camera shot style of 2018's reboot returns, impressively snaking through the entirety of Ragnarok as if mimicking the world serpent Jormungandr himself.
What kind of weird analogy was that? This is actually pretty funny.
My goodness, what a strapping physique.
I was not entertained by Ratatoskr. This is comedy relief character number 28 in this game. Song of Ice and Fire, of course.
God of War's combat has always
that
been
actually is a pretty
flashy
good pun, I'll give you
that
that.
draws a crowd in to be wowed by its story, however, and Ragnarok continues that tradition. Kratos' blades whip around in every direction, delivering a clanking fiery pain to any face they meet.
What is with this writing? This is padding. This man's trying to turn in a 2,000-word essay to his English teacher and really trying to add on adjectives.
Heavy cleaves of his axe crunch into enemies, making them fold like bloodied origami. And yes, that
This
axe
is
still
padded
slices through the
writing.
air, meatily lodging itself into anything unfortunate enough to be in its path, before being recalled to your palm with what remains one of the most satisfying button presses ever assigned to a controller.
This man just spent way too long describing, in this game, you can mash your Chaos Blades, you can throw your axe, and you can recall it with a button press. Amazing. Again, we know this. Thank you.
It's all unapologetically fast and undeniably glorious,
Fast.
harking back to the brand of frantic action in which the series was originally rooted. But even with
NinerZeno209 with the buck, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. High five.
that slight shift to old school action, Ragnarok's eyes are still drawn more to the shimmer of Nathan Drake's gold rather than Bayonetta's platinum. Cinematic spectacle takes precedence over the chaotic, bordering on cartoonish action of old.
That
the
is
act
true.
feels largely similar to how you remember, and that's no bad thing with its dynamic mix of heavy attacks and ranged power. But how you wield the blades is noticeably different. There's a greater emphasis on using them to hook enemies and maneuver them around the arena, whether that be dragging them in towards you or juggling them in the air like the hottest of potatoes. They're much closer to how they felt in the original games,
Like the hottest
a
of
nostalgic
potatoes.
moveset with a brilliant modern edge. Both weapons have new tricks to show off too. You can Frost Awaken the axe by holding in the triangle button to power up your next attack, or mash the same button while the blades are equipped to ignite them.
You'll notice in these sponsored reviews, they use the same talking points as they did in the Game Explain one, and they paste them the same way. So that's how you know that was part of their press kit. They talk about the same points the same way. That's why I can't stand these sponsored reviews.
Even the shield is now more of an offensive tool, and different types can be bought and
They hyperinflate like this marketing speak, while really downplaying the main point. Like, I want you to talk me more. Why did you overlook the fact that this game had poor pacing? Please rationalize that. No. Look at how you can mash attack and do this.
crafted to fit your playstyle. Runic abilities, special cooldown attacks assigned in your inventory also return, and while there isn't the same abundance of choice this time around, each is devastatingly effective.
At least they're honest on that. It is a smaller scope in terms of the combat. That is very true.
Finishes on stunned enemies are another enjoyable throwback to the God of War of old. There's noticeably a good amount of variety in the randomly chosen weapon-specific animations too. Movement
As he shows a highly repeated execution animation.
is further emphasised by the way you can now grapple up from a distance using the blades and launch across gaps to dive into combat. Taller area design literally adds extra layers to battles, allowing you to leap from a ledge to deliver death from above. Combat sequences can feel akin to Doom kill boxes, as you dash and swing around elevated platforms towards your next victim in performances of acrobatic bloodshed, juggling cooldowns, Atreus' arrows, and your rage meter to efficiently and spectacularly destroy everyone sent to stop you. Each fight feels like a real occasion as you slalom your way
Every
through
fight
rage.
does not feel like a real occasion. There are so many times where like we're going from one story beat to another story beat, and like a fight happens. You're like, why is there a random spawning of enemies here? And why these enemies? Like they just randomly pop up out of nowhere. They know exactly where you are and just like, blarg, we're here to kill you, and then they just die, and then you move on like nothing happened.
Ranged, parryable and unblockable attacks in order to sneak in a hit or two. Enemies can now perform powerful but interruptible attacks, signified by a blue ring above their head in addition to their regular skills. A double tap of the shield will sort these out, but get your timing wrong and you're in line for some considerable pain. There are plenty of other big additions to combat that I won't divulge so as not to ruin the sensation of discovering them yourself.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but why are you watching a review on the game if you don't want to learn more about the game? I feel like assuming the risk of learning more about this game that you are about to play is part of it, right?
But rest assured, Ragnarok has myriad more tools in its bag than God of War 2018 ever did, and is all the more enthralling for it. It all feels exceptional when in full flow, often mesmerising with its top-tier action drenched in rhythmic brutality, and is quite simply the best combat I can remember playing in a game. And that
Okay, this guy said the best combat he can remember playing in a game. which begs the question, well, what combat do you remember playing in the game, and how good is your memory?
Just goes for the regular fights. Boss battles are of both a higher quantity and quality, including one encounter that makes the opening Stranger fight from 2018 look like a playground scuffle.
How dare you? That Thor fight does not hold a candle to the Baldur fight.
It's not just the story bosses either. I fought massive alligator bastards called Dreki on more than one occasion, which were
Yeah, it's almost like they reuse the same bosses.
a real event to fight and more of a challenge than 2018's trolls ever posed.
No. They have the same 2 or 3 movesets, and I'm not gonna lie, the first Dreki was the hardest one because, you know, you're not really used to it and you're just kind of learning it. Every other Dreki I encountered, like the other 6 or 7, they all melted. They all just super melted. Super easy.
It's great to see sprinklings of that old school monster mayhem thrown into the mix, which manages to successfully...
Because everybody knows from Norse mythology that the Dreki, you know, that really has the same iconic Norse mythology presence as like the Minotaur from Greek mythology or the Medusa, you know, the Dreki. Everyone talks about the Dreki. You can't talk about Norse mythology without talking about the Dreki.
offset some of the more serious stretches of the story. Smart new...
Also, real question, Galax, if you're still in there in chat, are there actually dragons? Like, traditional European dragons and wyverns and drakes in Norse mythology? Like, I know there is dragon. Like, I think I remember from Valkyrie Profile, like, there's a dragon stone. And there are... But, I don't know, are they like the traditional European dragons? I don't know. Somebody tell me.
Puzzle ideas are consistently introduced.
Or, if you can also do that, please, just to make sure I'm not being overly sarcastic, is the Dreki actually a very big Norse mythology monster? Is it a very well-known one? Is that just my ignorance speaking?
And building complexity throughout as more abilities are added to your arsenal. They're often fun and never in danger of slowing your progress to the detriment of the plot. But even so, Atreus or Mimir can't help but come in with a hint far too early and sometimes rob you of that satisfying aha moment.
Oh, so it's nice that they talk about the fact that the puzzles solve themselves.
It's a very rare annoyance in a world...
Rare annoyance, right. Tell that to anybody who's actually played this game.
Where normally every last word is a joy to listen to.
Dreki is just the Icelandic word for dragon? Really? I did not know that. So that alligator's considered a dragon, huh?
Armor customization has been streamlined, resulting in the removal of the slotting system for a more straightforward upgrading mechanic.
Straightforward, i.e. less customization. I think the modular upgrade was better in 2018, albeit a little bit more... you have less control, you did have more customization. Here you have more control, but less customization. Go figure.
Enchantments are now placed inside a separate amulet, rather than spread over various pieces of...
The enchantments were so negligible. They were so negligible. There were so many times I forgot to slot in runes, and like the game kept popping up saying, you have an empty slot on your rune thing, because it didn't matter. They were so minor in their perks. I mostly use them as just stat boosts.
Gear. This division makes seeing what you have...
Because it turns out, when I was playing the game on my playthrough, which if you want to watch the stream you can, I kept putting a focus on runic and cooldown, and when I did my cleanup, it turns out, if you just stack everything into strength, everything just dies. Like, the game is actually super easy if you just stack everything into strength, because the runic attacks are so strong on their own.
Equipped easier and means you aren't lost delving into too many menus within menus. This also means you can upgrade a piece of armor and take it with you through your journey if your playstyle happens to perfectly click with a certain set, or...
Damn, are you telling me I can actually wear and use the armor I upgrade and equip throughout the game? That's amazing. I know what he's trying to say. He's trying to say that unlike the previous game where if you found a higher level piece of gear, you're more likely to use that higher level piece of gear than when you were sitting around at a lower level, versus this one where you can use a set bonus and just upgrade and keep using that set bonus throughout the game. I get it, but I'm just making fun of the way he phrased it. Calling this a saga is technically correct. Saga just means story. That is a over abstraction of the term. Saga means story, but saga does not mean just any story. Not every story is a saga. It is not that plain, Amar. I do have to correct you on that. Because there are literary expectations and reasons why we use the word saga over just the general term of story. We do use that word, it carries a meaning with it.
Or you just love how it looks. The same goes for weaponry, which can be upgraded, as well as fitted with attachments such as individually named hilts and handles, each with their own perks and bonuses. Who wouldn't want to play with the Stonecutter's knob, after all?
Whoa, was that an innuendo?
Realms old and new are regularly a sight to behold.
Saga is the Icelandic word for story. Sure. Just like salsa is the Spanish word for sauce. But even in the Spanish tongue, there are more words to describe more nuanced and specific instances of sauce than just salsa. And if we take this into the American thing, not every sauce is salsa, even though salsa is the word for sauce. You see what I'm saying? Like, context matters.
Many looking torn from the pages of fairy tales, stocked with oversized flora and fauna. There's an extra
Flora and fauna and not NPCs or interactable environments.
effort to delve deeper into
So you can look but not touch.
The mythology this time around, and as someone who's a fan of the Nordic source material, it's a real pleasure to see all of the
Whoa, that's a spoiler right there. Giant jellyfish.
different interpretations of creatures, people, and places they inhabit, brought to life in all manner of delightfully weird ways. For example, the dwarven city of Nidavellir is a welcome rural change of scenery, with its many homes and tunnels that Kratos must amusingly crawl around in. It's at the centre of the rocky realm of Svartalfheim, where
Svartalfheim. I thought it was Svartalfheim.
waterways weave through islets littered with bubbling geysers. There's a real sense that
geysers.
This realm was ripped right out of the Old Norse poetic Edda's home of Iceland. Those geysers are also key to
some Icelandic geysers. Interesting. What accent says this like this?
solving many of the puzzles in the region, as you freeze them to create stepping stones and manipulate machinery. Quirks like this help in making each place feel unique. Similarly, fun ideas are introduced in the returning Alfheim, such as reflective crystals that you can ricochet your axe off of to open doors, or even use to blindside unwitting opponents.
Such as? That's the only thing that they do.
In combat. It's a further example of not only each realm looking distinct, but also feeling distinct to play in from one another. Every location almost feels like a puzzle box that you're gradually unlocking through a combination of brain and brawn as you make your way through it.
And that's actually another thing that I forgot to mention, though I mentioned in my 2018 deep cut, is the puzzles in 2018 were generally small and they were just more obstacles in the path. They didn't force you to stop and engage with it. A lot of the disruptive rhythm in Ragnarok's pacing is the fact that along the way, you have to stop and do their inane, what they call a puzzle, and it lingers for too long. And I'm sure they are aware of this, which is why they solve it for you almost immediately or while you're solving it, because even they feel that it takes too long. However, it then makes you wonder, well then why did you put this in here at all, much less tell me the moment that we had this just to make me go through the motions? And the answer is padding.
These worlds bring with them dangerous new threats. If there are any faults to be found in 2018's revival, they're modest enemy variety.
Like, the whole thing with the Huntress, like centaurs are suddenly just there in Midgard. We didn't encounter a single centaur in all of 2018, but there's like a handful of them over here. But whatever, they just hand wave it away.
May well have been one of them. However, there is no such issue in Ragnarok, with its bestiary vastly expanded to accommodate all sizes and shapes of creatures. Familiar foes such as Draugr and elves have made their way across, but this time they're joined by creatures like Grimms, which, you guessed it, are pretty grim, scuttling toad people. Then there's a personal favourite, the Einherjar, Aesir warriors who harness the power of the Bifrost that makes a section of your health bar glow before removing that chunk on the next hit. There's an engaging but never unfair difficulty curve throughout as you're met with progressively greater threats.
Man, those birds were annoying, by the way. Those birds were probably the most annoying thing to fight.
Side missions are sometimes spectacles in their own right. They're a great source of character development as you learn more about your friends and companions by helping them right.
Oh, the giant whale.
Runs.
This is a
Some
spoiler.
side quests do just present a pure gameplay challenge over extra.
I wish that this was part of the main story, because that really would have added to the spectacle. Like, they were only the most few visually interesting things, but you completely skip past them, and even though they don't have an impact in those same side areas, they did add something to tie to the that realm, you know? Like, it was something interesting to that realm that I felt was really lacking in the main course.
Stories, however, such as hunting down powerful legendary enemies dotted across the realms of Yggdrasil's roots. There is no shortage of genuinely tough side boss encounters either. Chipping away at larger health bars is a really satisfying challenge, and
that's bullshit.
remarkably well balanced against the standard quick kill nature of the majority of Ragnarok's fights. It's yet another testament to the masterful combat design on display.
Masterful combat, having giant ass health bars that, again, really slow down the pace of a fight because you are just chipping away at it, and you see too much of the same reused animation that it doesn't feel special anymore. It overstays its welcome. A lot of these bosses should have had half their health. They're way too long. And the whole idea of super armor on enemies is just there to pad out the health even more.
And yes, there are some absolutely tough as nails endgame level challenges to rival the Valkyries of 2018, but I'm gonna let you find out what those are for yourself.
I felt the only really hard fights in this game, again, were the multiple 2-on-1 fights. Like, the 2-on-1 Valkyrie fight was tough. The 2-on-1 or even 3-on-1 on one of them, Berserker ones, were the only challenging one, and the Berserker King himself was challenging. The Valkyrie Queen was surprisingly very easy. Same thing for the Raven Witch in Niflheim.
There's a substantial slew of collectibles to clean up as well, with Odin's ravens.
There certainly are a substantial amount of collectibles, I'll give you that.
In every corner. There's a ton to be done after the main story has been brought to a close, all of it incredibly moorish and fun to complete. Ragnarok never once rests on its laurels, throwing new ways to play.
You're right, it doesn't rest on its laurels, it rests on 2018's laurels and takes it for granted.
You until the very end. Despite having a seemingly endless amount to praise here, I really have barely scratched the surface of what God of War Ragnarok has to offer. I'm deliberately omitting dozens of secrets and surprises.
You're really not.
He
kind of actually covered pretty much everything.
Didn't dare spoil what's to come for anyone booting it up for the first time, but rest assured,
nobody says you have to spoil a story to talk about it and its flaws.
There are both huge story moments.
Like, the guys at Game Explain managed to do that. Like, they managed to talk about the pacing, the relevance, the usage of characters without talking about specifics. You can do that. This review's just too lazy to do it.
And fresh gameplay additions that live up to and often surpass expectations. Taken all together, much like The Godfather Part 2, God of War Ragnarok.
Again, why are you using an example that, granted, The Godfather is much more recognizable than Horizon? Why would you use this example? It's not a great analogy.
Ragnarok delivers not only a chapter that reaches the lofty heights of its predecessor, but leaves it impossible to imagine this.
Speaking of sagas, the Godfather Saga, which revises the Godfather trilogy into chronological order, is, in my opinion, the best way of experiencing that movie. Don't at me.
Series without it. An enthralling spectacle to behold, and an even more exciting one to take the reins.
Let me guess, I gave it a 10 out of 10.
God of War Ragnarok melds action and adventure together to create a new, unforgettable Norse saga. Impeccable writing, pitch-perfect performances.
Impeccable writing.
Performances.
The performances are good.
Knockout action is
not knockout action.
It's a complete work of art from top to bottom. Reflecting its core themes, it's everything a sequel should be. Respectful of its legend.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. According to what's-his-face, this isn't a sequel.
Lineage, but not afraid to take it to exciting new places. God of War Ragnarok is an almighty achievement, and creates a new high that makes many of its peers look positively mortal by comparison. For my full written review...
Damn, what a dickless review. One thing. But yeah, a saga is more specifically a type of story. Not every story is a saga. People, I feel like, use the word saga like they're using the word plot, which just denotes like a timeline event. Like, you use the word saga when you're talking about the type of story that involves drama, like you would for like an epic play or a heroic story or some melodrama. Like, those are the reasons you would use an epic. It's a type of story. It's like telling a type of poem. Like, the way that you speak and the words that you use and the tones that you emphasize that are used to emphasize those aspects of the story for entertainment purposes. That's a saga with those story beats. Like, a saga is not just a catch-all term. It's fine that in other languages saga means one thing. It also can mean story in English, but it means a particular type of story. It has a lot more context. I can't speak for other languages and cultures, but in English, that's what it means. You are from Iceland. That's amazing. And we also have someone from Iceland. We have someone from Sweden here too, which, by the way, I can only imagine your perspective on the American renditions of Norse mythology to be amusing, by the way. But it's fascinating that that's the perspective from Iceland or Sweden. I do find that genuinely interesting. All I can do is just offer our interpretation of what we use that word for, because a lot of American literature is based on British literature, which did have epic storytelling, but I don't know, we pull a lot from different sources here, especially Shakespeare. Big influence on our American storytelling. Call this the Kratos saga? Well, that's just it though. This is the 9th game in the Kratos saga. It's certainly a saga, but it's just another chapter of it. I will say though that the Kratos saga does incorporate more of it. Like, this is like one arc of that saga. Like, I feel like that's where we're gonna have to agree in the middle ground. It's really not worth like discussing or debating. It's just splitting hairs at that point. But yeah, if you missed the early part of this stream, go ahead and watch it if you don't feel too cut up. If you are watching this on the replay, I forgot to record the first half of the deep cut we were watching. But at the same time, maybe that's incentive for you to consider subscribing or becoming a member or becoming a patron and getting access to the deep cut coverages that I do for all the games that I make recapitations for, if you ever want to hear my personal reviews on them. Not all of them are so long-winded, but many of them are. So if you enjoy just hearing somebody else ramble, but not ramble as bad as Skillup apparently does, then give that a shot. I at least talk about the game. But yeah, that seems to be a lot of the Ragnarok reviews that I feel like watching for today. Surprisingly, even these ones that are overwhelmingly positive in the end, I do respect the fact that they, albeit briefly, talk about a lot of the weak points of the game, such as the overly simplistic combat, the odd use of side areas, the emphasis on collectathons and grinding for materials, the overall bad pacing. They, want to focus more on the positives, such as the visual spectacle nature of some of it, the visual fidelity, the UI, the accessibility options, the acting and performances. They really want to emphasize that, even though, in my opinion, the game encompasses more of it. I feel like out of all the neutral reviews, I talked about the good and the bad. Incidentally, this Quantum TV guy probably was the best one of the bunch. He not only made very simple but direct points, he supported directly with evidence, and then prefaced a lot of his opinionated positions as opinions. And I felt they were very safe and honest takes. I did feel a genuine honesty from them. Go figure. What this has done, this little watch along, is show why I don't really care about reviews. A lot of these reviews seem very useless to me. I can't imagine anybody watching this before they purchase a game that they were on the fence about this being persuasive in any manner. A lot of this was chock full of marketing speak and fluff. Very too rich for my diet, personally. But it was very nice to meet many of you, by the way. Thank you, Niner0209 again for your donation. Appreciate you. Always helps. And appreciate a lot of you coming out and seeing this. We have played this chapter of the God of War / Kratos saga. And it's just an okay game. It's a highly polished average game. As a sequel, it is a step down from 2018. If you want the TLDR, good game, bad sequel. That's my take. Although personally, it's just again, average. It's a very average game. Play it if you're a fan of God of War. Don't play it if you're a fan of God of War. I think you'll get the same reaction either way. You probably already played it. And if you haven't played this and you're considering playing it, I would say wait for a steep discount. If you really feel like you have to play this game, wait for a steep discount. So, it's always fun to do watch-alongs every now and then. We'll probably, in the distant future, do one when I probably do other God of War games. But we'll see. No promise in terms of the next couple of weeks because it is holiday season for us here in the States. I probably will do Valkyrie as the next game that we play. And into the new year, we'll probably do Stranger of Paradise because I want to do a co-op game. So we'll see. Thank you everybody for coming out. It was great to meet many of you on this journey. A lot of you came by, stuck around for multiple sessions. I scared off some people. I have certainly angered some people. Maybe I have attracted some new people. We will see. But yeah, thank you everybody for watching my silly playthroughs and my weird opinions and my long-winded rants. I appreciate the patience you guys have shown. But yeah, we will pick this up on Tuesday. My mind may change in terms of what we play. I don't know, but we will see. But until then, I will see you guys on the next battlefield. Please look forward to the next recapitation. And thanks for watching. Have a good night.